Chapter 320. Right now, Rabbit Ball was like a firework that was burning itself. It could only burn for a short period of time, but it couldn't last for too long. Of course, when he used the final skill Death Meridian, Rabbit Ball was already prepared to die. He only wanted to make up for the mistakes he made in the past. His body quickly turned, like a ghost in the night, and in the blink of an eye, he was already beside Huanan, and a sacrificial blade silently stabbed the neck of Huanan. With Rabbit Ball's current strength, even through the combat suit, he could poke a bloody hole, so Huanan naturally didn't dare to be careless. So Huanan quickly stretched out his hand, and with a clever posture, he caught the stab from the bottom, and after catching it, he punched Rabbit Ball's heart. Rabbit Ball didn't want to take the punch, but his figure flashed, and once again appeared behind Huanan. At the same time, he used the sacrificial blade to stab the back of Huanan's head. This move was simply impossible to guard against. His figure flickered and his shadow merged into one on the ground. Finally, when Huanan dodged the stab, he took the opportunity to kick him in the shin. Ka! At the same time, Huanan felt his leg go numb, and his leg was almost broken by Rabbit Ball's kick, and his body also staggered forward, showing the power of this kick. Taking advantage of the opponent's unstable body, Rabbit Ball's two hands swept out like a gust of wind, and the sacrificial blade almost fell on Huanan's body without any pattern, as if he wanted to turn him into a meat paste. Such a violent fighting style made the surrounding guardian ninjas stunned. Previously, Rabbit Ball's battle gave people a pleasing feeling, but now, it was like a violent storm raging waves. Sharp blades swept out with a strong wind-breaking sound, and the wind and thunder were strong. In an instant, Huanan's body was covered with injuries. Obviously, even the combat suit that could block bullets couldn't block Rabbit Ball's hands. If Huanan had the upper hand in the previous battle, and Rabbit Ball was injured all over his body, then the situation was quickly reversed. With the blessing of the final skill Death Meridian, Rabbit Ball has now recovered to the peak of his life, which is the time when he was invincible in the world, around 30 years old. Ha 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 ha. Delightful, delightful. I didn't expect this old man to be able to recover to the peak of his life at the age of 70, and even kill that bastard grandson of mine. God is really good to me. Incessantly launching attacks at the Mirage Temple, causing it to be riddled with wounds. Although Tu-Wan felt as though his body was creaking like a speeding old car, he still had a cheerful smile on his face. Of course, happy, too happy. Everyone who went against the Kanzai family had to die. This sentence was instilled into Bunny Ball by his father when he was very young. It was almost like brainwashing. Bunny Ball had almost forgotten his father's appearance and figure. After all, it had been 50 to 60 years since his father had perished together with the previous leader of the Black Feather Ninjas. Rabbit Ball, Rabbit Ball. Rabbit Ball of the past. Rabbit Ball. Rabbit Ball, the guardian ninjas of the Kamiyoshi. Regardless of whether the family has been prosperous or unstable for hundreds of years, this group of ninjas have never forgotten their duties and have always been by his side. This level of service is far beyond the level of loyalty to the master. It is close to the level of faith. That's right, in Rabbit Ball's heart, the Kamiyoshi clan is his faith. Whether it is Lady Rue Hui or Lady Colored Glaze, as long as someone wants to harm them, even if it is the King of Heaven, they must die. But while Rabbit Ball was fighting with all his might, Huanan on the other side was miserable. Never in his wildest dreams would he have thought that Tu-Wan would actually have a hidden skill that could allow his strength to rise to such a level. This old man in his 70s used his hand as a blade. Every move he made was like an antelope hanging its horn. There was not the slightest trace of damage. Often, before Huanan could react, he felt a burning pain in his body. This kind of skill that replaced the blade with bare hands and super-fast speed can be described as a ninja's profession characteristics incisively and vividly. Unknowingly, Huanan had dodged hundreds of steps in a row. At this time, he could only constantly move his body. He didn't even have time to take a breath. His heart was already suffering. I can't stop. I can't stop. If I don't keep moving, there is a high probability that I will be seriously injured by Rabbit Ball's blade, or even die on the spot. Damn it. This old man is crazy, I can't die here. Juanan knew that if this continues, it is only a matter of time before he is defeated, so he couldn't help but think of a way. From the beginning, Juanan was aiming to kill Rabbit Ball. In fact, when he forced out the final technique, Death Meridian, this goal was already achieved. A wise man knows better than to fight when the odds are against him. Let those guys directly bombard the Camillo Imperial Garden. I can also take the opportunity to escape. Thinking of this, Juanan also steeled his heart. While dodging and gasping for breath, he took the opportunity to make a special hand gesture to the 3 Apache helicopters, floating a few hundred meters above. Although it was night, and Juanan's hand gesture wasn't particularly obvious, but he believed that the carefully trained, spread the martial arts mercenary group could see it clearly. After all, the Fighting Under the Heavens mercenary group was a mercenary group directly under Yongji. Every mercenary in the group was an elite that had fought their way out of the battlefield. Moreover, they had long been using binoculars to closely observe the situation here. Sure enough, when Juanan made the hand gesture, the helicopters that were floating in the air quickly turned around and began to fly over here. They are going to make a move. Seeing that the 3 helicopters were preparing to fly at a low altitude, and that the single-barreled chain cannons were about to open fire on the Kanzaki ninjas and the Imperial Garden's bodyguards, even the experienced ninjas couldn't help but feel a pang of panic. This was an armed helicopter, a genuine weapon of mass destruction on the battlefield. Although the Kamiyoshi ninjas also have weapons, these pistols, submachine guns, and other light weapons are no threat to the helicopters. They can only passively take a beating. Juanan, you, spread out. Everyone spread out. Seeing that Juanan, this bastard, actually ignored the previous agreement and summoned the helicopters to break into the battlefield, Bunkomaru angrily attacked him while shouting at his companions. But even so, it was all too late. The single-barrel chain cannon below the helicopters began to spin and preheat, and at any time, it could spray out deadly sparks. However, the real magic wasn't this. But in the next moment, a rocket flew from the sky not far away like a meteor. Whoosh! Boom! Before the closest helicopter could open fire, the rocket already drew a beautiful parabola in the night sky hundreds of meters away and landed on top of the helicopter and made a series of loud explosions. What the hell? In the next second, under the dumbfounded gazes of the people below, the helicopter that was flying at a low altitude like an eagle destroying its prey suddenly turned into a huge fireball, falling down shakily like a bird that had been shot down by a stone. Bang! With a loud crash, the helicopter crashed to the ground, and the pilot and the rest of the crew ended their lives with the great feat of smashing through a wall. Rocket launcher? Who is it? Juanan's eyes almost popped out of their sockets when she saw the helicopter that Lady Yongji had sent to support her crash in the blink of an eye. She hurriedly looked in the direction where the rocket came from. It would have been better if Juanan did not look up. At the same time, the other 2 rockets drew a beautiful arc in front and behind, respectively hitting the other 2 armed helicopters. How is this possible? Am I dreaming? When the last 2 helicopters turned into fireballs and fell to the ground, Juanan couldn't believe his eyes. The 3 rockets that flew from hundreds of meters away accurately hit the helicopter's propellers and shot it down from the sky. This kind of thing is extremely difficult to happen. After all, rocket launchers were not meant to be used to deal with aerial units. The accuracy of the rocket launchers could only be described as worrying. Even in civilian battlefields, they had to rely on multiple rocket launchers to shoot down low-flying helicopters in unison to barely be able to take them down. However, the guy who fired the rockets from afar completely ignored this convention. Instead, he directly fired 3 rockets, and one of them hit an armed helicopter. Everyone had a share, and no one missed. What was even more frightening was that each of these rockets had predicted the distance of several hundred meters in advance, and the arc of the parabola, and they had accurately hit the propeller that was guaranteed to be fatal. This kind of firing accuracy was simply amazing. Who the hell is it? I don't care. I just need to leave this place first. When the surroundings of the Mirage Nunnery were illuminated by the raging flames of the 3 helicopters, Rabbit Ball, who was not far away, was clutching his chest due to the final skill, Death Meridian, revealing a painful expression. But just as Huanan was about to run away, a hand patted him on the shoulder like a ghost. "Hey, don't go so fast, you haven't played with me yet." "What?" Before Huanan could react, his right hand was firmly locked by a big hand like an iron clamp, and at the same time, a sharp pain accompanied by the crisp sound of bones cracking came from the first joint. In just half a second, when Huanan turned his head, one of his fingers had already been twisted and broken by someone in an executioner's action. And the person who approached the strongest ninja in history like a ghost and broke his fingers while laughing showed a malicious smile under the light of the fire. Chapter 321. This guy is Ryudo Kiryu. As the new head of the secret department of the Heavenly Eye Group, Huanan also successfully promoted the previous head to the position of deputy head not long ago, so he naturally knows the enemies of the group. Now in the Heavenly Eye Group, as long as the enemy of the group is mentioned, it is impossible to avoid this supreme emperor. According to the rumors, although Ryudo Kiryu has a human face, he should be some kind of non-human creature, and there are countless legends related to him. Is it that exaggerated? He is just a 17 or 18 years old kid. Whenever he heard the legend about Ryudo, Huanan couldn't help but show a disdainful expression, and secretly said in his heart that he must personally take off that guy's head in the future. However, now that Ryudo has circled behind him like a ghost, and even grabbed his hand and broke his knuckles, Huanan knew that the legend was not exaggerated at all. Or rather, those legends did not reflect the horror of this man at all. How is it possible? How did he get behind me? For Huanan, it is an extremely inconceivable thing for Ryudo to get behind him silently. You know, he is a ninja, an expert at the back, an expert at sensing aura. How can he be easily circled to the back by others? As long as there is a trace of aura, Huanan can definitely find someone behind him. But Ryudo didn't even reveal a trace of aura. Of course, if Ryudo knew Huanan's doubts, he would definitely laugh out loud. Nonsense! I have full proficiency in the aura shielding technique and silent movement technique. As long as I don't want to be discovered, I can dance in front of your bed in the middle of the night, and you won't find out. But now Huanan didn't have time to think about how Ryudo got behind him. His attention was focused on his right hand that was caught. Kacha! Accompanied by the crisp sound of bones cracking. Before Huanan could react, his thumb had already been twisted into the shape of a fried dough twist. This bastard! Huh! After reacting, Huanan quickly rotated his body in the air, trying to use the force of the rotation to get rid of Ryudo's grasp and open the distance. Who would have thought that the moment his body leaped up and spun, the huge force transmitted from that hand directly fixed his muscular and slender body in place, causing him to forcefully stop halfway through his spin. Is there a mistake? Using the power of one hand to block the power of my whole body. Kacha! At the same time that the escape plan failed, Huanan's second finger was also lightly broken, and another heart-wrenching pain was transmitted over. There are 3 fingers, you have 3 chances. If you can't break free before all your fingers are broken, I will twist your head. Long Do looked at the surprised assassin and spoke as if he was talking to trash. Monster, this guy is a monster. Inner technique. The next second, Huanan's other arm slammed toward this side like a whip. His 3 fingers, which were in a triangular formation, pierced towards Long Do's face like the sharp tip of a whip. Huanan's sacrificial blade was not slow, and it was almost to the point where human dynamic vision could barely cope with it. But even so, Ryudo still saw it very clearly, because his dynamic vision at this time had reached the limit of human vision. LV5 Insight. When Ryudo learned that a powerful assassin had come to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, he had already spent 5 billion renminbi to raise his insight to the maximum level on the way here. Previously, when Tomahawk was raided in Moscow, the Black Hand Alliance had seized a large amount of loot, including a large amount of cash and gold. After exchanging the loot for cash, Long Do had a few billion yuan in his account. He was filthy rich. At this time, with the superhuman level of LV5 insight, no matter how fast Huan'an's movements were, it was at best in Ryudo's eyes. Whoosh! As a result, the moment that whip-like hand pierced out, Long Do grabbed Huan'an's right hand and threw his body into the sky. With this throw, Huan'an only felt that his whole body lost balance and flew in the sky like a kite. The sacrificial blade that was originally aimed at the opponent's face had already missed. Crack! The moment he landed, another finger was quickly broken, and there were only 2 left. In other words, if Huan'an couldn't get rid of Ryudo's grasp in the next 2 operations, then he was dead. This was not a battle at all, but an execution. Ryudo knew this, and Huan'an also knew this. The former enjoyed it, while the latter was in extreme pain. This pain was not only from the physical pain, but the most terrible was the mental torture. Why did I, the head of the Tenmu group, the strongest ninja of the era, fall to the point of being executed in public by a 17 or 18-year-old brat? Damn it. There was no other way. Seeing that he still had 2 chances, and the opponent was about to kill him, Huan'an had to make an extremely painful decision. Under the illumination of the surrounding flames, the strongest ninja suddenly flew up, and the sharp blade on his ninja boots popped out and stabbed towards Ryudo's temple. But no matter what, this kind of attack was a bit too casual. So Ryudo leaned sideways to avoid the kick, and after breaking the 4th finger he sneered and said, "Fourth, one last time you huh?" Bang! Before Huan'an's upper body landed on the ground, a few small balls had already landed on the ground, and after a burst of explosion, a thick smoke rolled up. The smoke quickly spread in all directions, and then completely blocked Ryudo's vision, and he couldn't see Huan'an's actions in front of him. "But is this useful? Your hand is still caught by me." "Well, it's fine." Just as Ryudo grabbed Huan'an's wrist and was about to pull him back to beat him up, he suddenly felt his hand become lighter, as if the weight on the other side suddenly disappeared. Good guy, ruthless. After the smoke slowly dissipated, Ryudo looked at the arm in his hand that was cut off at the elbow, and couldn't help but sigh from the bottom of his heart. Because he couldn't break free from Ryudo's grasp, Huan'an actually cut off his own arm, which was really ruthless. When the smoke dissipated, Huan'an's figure had also completely disappeared in front of Ryudo's eyes. In the garden of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, there were only 3 military helicopters burning, and the cat house not far away on the ground covered with rabbit ball. "Old man, are you okay?" At this time, Ryudo walked in front of Rabbit Ball and asked. At least on the surface, Rabbit Ball was indeed in a very bad condition. He was bleeding all over, his eyes were lifeless, and his breathing was weak, as if he was going to the gates of hell in the next moment. You're here." After seeing Ryudo, Rabbit Ball opened his eyes and said earnestly, "I can't go on anymore. The mission to protect Lady Rue Hui and Lady Colored Glaze is..." Oh. Before Rabbit Ball finished speaking, Ryudo had already taken out a pill from who knows where and stuffed it into his mouth, and then helped him swallow it. What did you feed me?" "A life-saving medicine. Whether you die or not, it's not up to you, it's up to me, understand?" After casually taking out a life-saving elixir that Wu Hong had eaten before and stuffing it into the rabbit ball, Long Do threw the rabbit ball on the ground and leisurely ran inside to find Rue Hui. As for Rabbit Ball, who was originally lying on the ground waiting for death, the moment the elixir entered his mouth, he felt a warm current flowing through his originally tattered body, and the intense pain immediately lessened by quite a bit. No way. What did he feed me? I don't have to die. What kind of person is this? A god? Looking at Ryudo's back, Rabbit Ball couldn't help but break out in cold sweat. Although he knew that Ryudo was no longer the little extreme Dao young master that he threatened a year ago, he didn't expect this person to become a living god that could even control his own life. Not long after, Ryudo also came to the emergency underground safe room of the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, and saw Rue Hui, who was sitting alone with a strange expression, as if she wasn't in a good mood. "Lady Rue Hui, don't worry. The matter outside has been resolved, and there are no casualties." Ryudo sat beside Rue Hui and said in a comforting tone. Is that so? That's great. Ruehui slightly raised her eyebrows after hearing this, and turned to look at Ryudo and sneered. But what I want to know is my cute daughter okay? Her body is relatively weak, so you have to be careful. After being scolded by Lady Ruehui, Ryudo showed a somewhat awkward expression. After all, when the two were talking on the phone, Lady Ruehui heard Colored Glaze's angry words on the bed. She must already know what happened over there. His mother-in-law had overheard him having sex with her daughter in front of her, so the situation was somewhat awkward. So Ryudo could only smile bitterly. That Lady Ruehui, actually we. In fact, you two are in love with each other, and you are young and vigorous. It is reasonable for something to happen. I won't interfere too much, don't worry. Ruehui's tone was somewhat complicated, of course. Her mood was even more complicated. On one hand, Ruehui also hoped that her daughter could be happy, but on the other hand, she always felt a little uncomfortable in her heart. When she thought of Ryudo and Colored Glaze being affectionate and sweet together, Ruehui didn't know who she was envious of. Forget it. Heaven's Eye has already made a move. Next is the decisive battle with I am. As the master of the Kamiyoshi clan, I shouldn't think about this anymore. After sending the embarrassed Ryudo away, Ruehui took a deep breath, looked up at the bright moon in the sky, and tried to calm her chaotic heart. Chapter 322. The night of the second day. Inside the Heavenly Eye Group headquarters' unrestrained sky tower, a slim figure was walking slowly in the corridor covered with red carpets. Was it because yesterday's new product was too awesome? My waist is a bit sore. This beautiful woman with a cold face opened her rosy lips and yawned as she walked. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to support her slender waist, as if she had gone overboard last night. Just as she pushed open the door and entered a small conference room, there was already a bear-like man in a thick trench coat waiting for her in the conference room. He looked very sturdy. Director Teshima, long time no see. Seeing his old colleague push open the door and enter, the head of the Heavenly Eye Group's weapons department, Nicholas, raised his head and greeted her indifferently. Nicola, the last time I saw you was 2 years ago. The director of the Heavenly Eye Group, Guard Department, Teshima Linhua, also nodded and sat on the chair on the right side of Nicola. Speaking of which, although there were 4 directors in this group, there was no friendship between the directors, and they rarely met each other. It was not strange to not see each other once in a year or two. After all, the directors were usually busy with their work. Unless there was really a big event, there were few opportunities and occasions to appear together. Of course, the reverse of this sentence meant that when the ministers appeared together, it would really be accompanied by something big. After taking a seat, Linhua looked at the 2 empty seats next to the conference table, as well as the very special throne at the head of the table. He smiled and said, "Speaking of which, Lord Yongji actually called you back this time. She should be serious now." I don't dare to guess what I am, Sama is thinking. I can only say, it's very likely. Just as Nicola and Linhua were chatting in the conference room, a middle-aged man with snake-like yellow pupils and a chicken nest on his head also pushed the door and walked in. "Yo Yomi, I heard that you were poisoned by hell butterfly before. It's not easy to still be alive." When the old man appeared, Nicola said to him with a slightly mocking tone. It was hard to imagine that the relationship between the two was not particularly good. How can a mere anesthetic kill this old man? Hearing this, Huang Quan could not help but grit her teeth. She crossed her arms and sat on the stool. She sneered. "Compared to me, you should be more concerned about the situation of the new head of the intelligence department. He is still lying in the hospital room this morning." "The new head of the intelligence department. Isn't he the one who kicked Heavy Fire out not long ago? I think he's called Huanan. What happened to him?" Linhua had naturally heard about the change in the head of the intelligence department of the Heavenly Eye Group. Before this, the head of the intelligence department had always been the leader of the Black Feather Ninja, Heavy Fire. However, all of a sudden, a young man called Huanan defeated Zhong Hua in a one-on-one duel and seized the position of minister. According to Ling Hua's understanding of the situation, the new minister Huan and should be a very strong person. How could she suddenly enter the ward? Humph. He went to the Kamishiro Imperial Garden to cause trouble last night and ended up losing more than 3 armed helicopters. He even broke his own arm and came back. He's a hopeless idiot. When this matter was mentioned, Nicholas couldn't help but scold him. After all, the 3 Apache armed helicopters were painstakingly built by their weapon department. As a result, the idiot Huanan lost them all in one night. He was even better at messing with planes than the Indians. Isn't that right? Now we are still working with the technical staff of the weapon department to install a prosthetic hand for him. This guy has just taken office and hasn't done anything yet. Instead, he has brought us a lot of trouble. At this time, Huang Quan also complained with a tone full of disgust. Oh, so that's the case. That's really miserable. After hearing the words of the 2 ministers, Lin Hua also roughly understood the general situation. Anyway, it was the new head of the secret department who went to fight with someone and ended up destroying the equipment of the weapons department. He also needed the medical department to treat him and asked the 2 departments to work together to install a prosthetic hand for him. He was indeed a troublesome person. It was no wonder that Nikolai and Yomi didn't treat him well. Clang. But just as the 2 ministers were crazily complaining about the new colleague, the door of the conference room was opened again. The young minister with a bandaged hand and a pale face walked in with heavy steps. After walking in, Huanan didn't say a word. He directly walked over and sat on the empty chair. He didn't even look at the 3 ministers of the other departments. It was as if they were air. Seeing his arrogant look, the hot-tempered Huang Quan couldn't help but ridicule him. TSK. You got yourself into trouble, and you still have the nerve to be so arrogant? My goal has been achieved. Rabitoshi is dead. I was just attacked by Ryudo Kiryu when I was retreating. What kind of trouble is that? Although from an objective point of view, Huanan was indeed severely beaten up last night, he couldn't say that he didn't complete his mission. After all, Rabitoshi was indeed dead. Or, he thought that Rabitoshi was dead, but in fact, Rabitoshi was just resting. Of course, Nikolai didn't agree with this statement. So he ridiculed him again. Sneak attack? I don't believe you can beat Tong Sheng Ryudo in a direct confrontation. I've seen his strength before. Believe it or not, I was just careless at that time. I didn't dodge. After being refuted by his colleague, Huanan's face turned red, but he still tried to defend himself. For a moment, he kept saying things like he doesn't talk about martial ethics. He didn't fight randomly. And he came prepared. The 3 of them just treated it as if they were listening to his nonsense. And the meeting room was filled with a cheerful atmosphere. However, just as Huanan, who had lost an arm, was trying her best to defend herself, a crisp sound of high heels could be heard. The lively atmosphere in the conference room came to an abrupt end, and it was as silent as a coffin shop. At this moment, the person who walked out from the other side of the conference room was the most beautiful woman in the world. Regardless of whether it was her appearance, figure, personal temperament, or taste in clothes, there was absolutely no one who would say anything bad about her. Of course, if someone dared to say anything bad about her, then that person would most likely be thrown to the dogs. After all, this was the most beautiful woman in the world, but also the most terrifying woman in the world. Even the 4 ministers of the Heavenly Eye group were nervous when facing their boss. They were like a naughty child who met the teacher without doing homework. Nikolai Lin Hua, Huang Quan Huan Nun. Every single person sitting here could be considered a dragon or phoenix among men of this generation. Each of them had experienced countless major events, and their hands were stained with the blood of countless people. But even if the 4 of them were added together, the number of people they killed was definitely not as much as I am, and definitely not as much as the boss of the Heavenly Eye group. Therefore, when Yongji strode with light steps, contentedly walked to her throne that was 1 level higher than the other 4 chairs and sat down, only then did she sweep her bewitching gaze across the 4 people one by one. It's really a pleasant thing to see the 4 of you gathered together. When everyone was at a loss for what to do, Yongji said with a smile, and then gently clapped her hands. The four ministers were well aware of their boss's strange and unpredictable words and actions. At this time Yomi, who was the most senior, took the lead and asked, "Lady Iam, you called the four of us here. There must be something to announce." "That's right. We have been preparing for the previous plan for so long. Everyone has put in a lot of effort for this. It's time for us to test the results." Test the results? Could it be? When they heard Iam's words, all the ministers widened their eyes and revealed excited expressions at the same time. All the core members of the Heavenly Eye group had always known one thing, and that was that this group was carrying out a plan that could shake the world and definitely change history. And the name of this plan was Enai Hanan Temple. The chaos of Hanan Temple back then caused Hanan Temple to fall into a sea of fire. And this time, Enai Hanan Temple wanted to cause all places except Hanan Temple to fall into a sea of fire. Therefore, the core of this plan was to destroy Japan. To destroy a country with the power of a group. Even if there was a group of capable people led by Iam, it was definitely not an easy job. But fortunately, before this, the four major departments had put in enough effort for this plan. Why destroy Japan? Other than Iam, no one knew, but this did not stop them from being excited about this plan. After all, there shouldn't be many normal people who could gather under Yongji's command. And destroying a country was something that would leave a mark in history, so it was natural that they would be attracted to it. It would be able to fully unleash the malice in their hearts. Lin Hua, has the Ministry of Internal Affairs been arranged properly? No problem, enough pawns and substitutes have been placed. Now most of the people in the Metropolitan Police Department, the Cabinet, and the Parliament are our people. We can do whatever we want. Nikolai, is the weapon to be sent to the Middle East ready? It's ready. They can carry out a magnificent war there at any time, to attract the attention of the world there. I guarantee that the United Nations will have a splitting headache. Yomi, has the production line for mass production of Hell Butterfly been completed? It can start. If necessary, it can be sent to the world's black market in large quantities. At that time, the cities of the entire Western world will be in chaos. Huanan, how's the preparation for the assassination of the leaders of the various countries? It was Chonghua who was in charge of this before, right? Lord Iam, this matter is still being arranged by Chonghua. He will participate in the plan as my best assistant. I can guarantee that when the time comes, none of the people who deserve to die will escape. Very good. Seeing that the ministers of the four major departments under her were fully prepared, Iam waved her hand and smiled. Now, I hereby announce that the Enai Hanan Temple plan will officially start from today. Whoa, 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 whoa. With Iam Tenmu and the four ministers rallying arms, the Tenmu group, that had already started operating behind them, began to slowly float up like a huge submarine from the bottom of the bottomless strait to the surface of the water. And the moment they all surfaced, it was also the moment the world was enveloped in the flames of war. Chapter 323. Winter in Tokyo was a pure white winter. When it was December, a light snow seemed to have sprayed the surrounding houses and the ground with a thin layer of white film. It looked white and shiny, clean and beautiful. But Ryudo was not in a good mood, because he was in trouble. 1 month after the attack on the Kamishiro Imperial Garden, Uni-senpai came to him with a very special message. Ryudo, come here. I have something to tell you. That morning, when Ryudo came to school to slack off, Yunyan mysteriously pulled him to a corner of the school. You have something to tell me? What's going on? Why are you being so secretive? At this time, the first class was about to start. The teaching building was secluded, and there was no one around. Yunyan, on the other hand, had a strange look on her face as she pulled Long Daodu to an empty space behind the teaching building. Yunyan, if you have something to say, just say it. Do you want me to help you read again? Because he was busy this month, Ryudo hadn't read Yunyan's novel for a long time. No matter how he looked at it, it didn't look like a novel written by a normal person. Since the golden heron Aki Yanasuk passed away a month ago, Rue Hui and Colored Glaze quickly used their family's relationship with Iwasaki Reiko to swallow up all of the golden heron, assets, and received an astronomical amount of money. After that, Rue Hui, who had money, connections, and influence, struck while the iron was hot. She quickly proposed a proposal to promote Gongxi to the new Golden Heron. She even hired the Black Hand Alliance to use countless dirty tricks to push Gongxi up. But it wasn't over yet. Although Kyoji became the Golden Heron of the Yatsuki, he still needed someone to fill the Dark Crow position. Therefore, Colored Glaze took a liking to Ryudo's other father-in-law, Saito Takahiro. As the head of the Saito Club, Takahiro had the qualifications to join the Yatsuki. It was just that Takahiro was too lazy to deal with those people, so he didn't join them. But even so, after Ryudo and Dunya's persuasion, Takahiro successfully entered the Yatsuki and successfully took another Dark Crow position. After all this, the Yatsuki could be said to have been infiltrated by Ryudo's forces. Rue Hui, Kyoji, and Takahiro all held important positions in the Yatsuki, and they were constantly trying to recruit other forces. A month later, the Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Sakujiri Group, and Saito Club began to fully display the power of the Iron Four Corners. Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Sakujiri Group, and Saito Club began to fully display the power of the Black Hand Alliance, Kamiyoshi Clan, Sakujiri Group, and Saito Club. In this case, Ryudo's side naturally made a lot of money, and there were a lot of things to worry about. Recently, every day was happy, until Yunyan suddenly came to the door. At this time, why was Yunyan so nervous to find Ryudo? Seeing that there was no one around, Yunyan boldly said, What I'm going to say next, don't be afraid. Afraid? Ryudo laughed and said, You really know how to joke. Who doesn't know that I, Ryudo Kiryu, am full of courage? There shouldn't be many things in this world that can make me afraid. The reason why Ryudo said this was not to brag, because now his courage had reached the level of LV5 courage, Extreme Superman, and he really wouldn't be afraid of certain things. However, not being afraid didn't mean that he wouldn't be shocked. Then I'll say it. Say it, don't worry, even if the sky falls, I'll help you. I'm pregnant. What? The moment he heard those words, Long Do was stunned for a moment. Then, he suddenly leaped into the air and did a 720-degree spin in the air. After landing from a height of 3 meters, he quickly reached out and hugged Yunyan's shoulder and asked nervously, You. What did you say? Are you really pregnant? Are you sure? The reason why Ryudo was so surprised was not unreasonable. After all, although he had been having sex with Yunyan since a month ago, they had been very honest and took protective measures every time. How could she suddenly be pregnant? Speaking of which, the only time Ryudo didn't take protective measures was the night in Moscow with Dunya. In the end, Dunya seemed to be fine, but Yunyan, who had been very safe, was pregnant? Wasn't this too bizarre? If it weren't for the fact that Ryudo had always believed in Yunyan's words, he would even suspect that he had been cheated on and that this child was not his. But when it came to why she was pregnant, Yunyan said in an awkward tone, I've already gone to the hospital for a checkup, and it's confirmed that I'm pregnant. Speaking of which, this matter is actually related to Sister Linhana. Linhana Tajima? What does it have to do with that girl? Can she help me get you pregnant? Something like that. Actually, after I found out that I was pregnant last night, I also asked Sister Linhana, and then she said. What did she say? She said that when she met us in Paris and went into the room with us, she secretly used a needle to pierce a hole in the box of toys we bought. That's why it's like this. Island. Lin. Hua. Is there something wrong with your brain? Hearing this, Ryudo couldn't help but reach out and cover his head. He secretly cursed that perverted woman 100 times in his heart. Psycho. Other than psycho, Ryudo really didn't know how to describe Linhana. Why did she want to stab someone else's condom with a needle? Did she want to have a nephew so badly? Great, that perverted Linhana really succeeded. Yunyan was really pregnant. But now, no matter who it was meaningless to blame anyone. Both of them had to face reality. Some time ago, Yunyan had just celebrated her 18th birthday. In a few months, she would graduate from this Dory #1 high school and step into society to start on her own path as a writer. But this unexpected pregnancy suddenly messed up Yunyan's life steps. Before she could have the identity of a writer, she already had the new identity of a mother-to-be. No, I'm a man. At this time, I have to stand up. After taking a deep breath, Ryudo reached out and hugged Yunyan into his arms. He comforted her softly. If you're pregnant, then so be it. Let's find a time to get the marriage certificate and have a wedding ceremony. It can be considered as an explanation to your parents. In Ryudo's view, since he did such a thing to someone else's daughter, then as a man, he must be responsible. There was no need to talk about getting the marriage certificate. He also had to have a grand wedding ceremony to let the woman feel that her 10 months of suffering was worth it. He also had to take care of her for the rest of her life. This was the responsibility of a man. But when he thought of the murderous expression on his father-in-law's face after this matter was exposed, Ryudo couldn't help but sigh. And what made him sigh even more was, at this time Yunyan, who was leaning in Ryudo's arms, raised her head and said with a worried tone, "If we get married, what about colored glaze and dunya?" That's right. Compared to his father-in-law who was difficult to appease, Ryudo needed to appease colored glaze and dunya more. In fact, before this, Ryudo had already thought of a solution for himself and his 3 harem. That was to change nationality and run to Saudi Arabia, UAE, Qatar, and other countries that allowed polygamy to get married. After all, marriage was the most important thing in a woman's life. They all hoped to have an unforgettable wedding. They definitely didn't want to follow their husband without any status. So Ryudo had already decided to take the 3 women out of this country to get married abroad after settling Iam's matter. Unfortunately, it seemed like it was too late now. Recently, there were many things happening. According to Colored Glaze's information, the Heavenly Eye Group's actions were becoming more and more obvious. They didn't give Ryudo time to bring them out to change nationality and have a wedding ceremony. However, Yunyan's stomach was about to get bigger. What should I do? Forget it, I have to let them know anyway. It's better to discuss it with Colored Glaze and Dunya. Based on the idea that everyone had the right to know, Ryudo planned to meet the 2 women at his house in the evening. He planned to have a small family meeting to settle this matter openly. But at this moment, Yunyan took the initiative to say, "Let me tell them. After all, this is the trouble created by Sister Linhua. It's not your fault." What if the 2 of them get angry? Seeing that I'm pregnant, even if they get angry, they probably won't do anything to me. Speaking of this, Yunyan confidently stuck out her belly that didn't have any ups and downs. Although there was a new life in it, at least from the outside, it was completely impossible to tell. Seeing that Yunyan was so insistent, Ryudo also agreed to let her take the initiative to inform the 2 of this happy event. The location was at the lunch meeting at noon. During this period, Ryudo and Colored Glaze often didn't come to school because of their busy work. However, it just so happened that they didn't have anything to do these 2 days, so Colored Glaze also obediently stayed in school at this time. Of course, even so, Colored Glaze definitely didn't expect that this lunch meeting at noon where Ryudo was absent would have such a big issue. "Both of you, because of some things, I accidentally got pregnant. I'm very sorry." Just when Yunyan lowered her head to Colored Glaze and Dunya very apologetically, the 2 women were stunned at the same time. Then, their attitude was completely different from what Yunyan had thought before. "Pregnant? Really? That's amazing." The first to react was Dunya. She hurriedly ran to Yunyan's side and leaned her little head on Yunyan's belly, as if she wanted to listen to the fetal movement in the belly. "Are you an idiot? How can a 1-month-old baby have fetal movement?" After seeing Dunya's reaction, Colored Glaze first ridiculed her, then calmly congratulated Yunyan. "Congratulations. I hope the child can be born healthy." Although her reaction was quite different from Dunya's, from Colored Glaze's tone and attitude, she obviously wasn't dissatisfied with Yunyan's pregnancy. This completely exceeded Yunyan's expectations. Chapter 324. What's going on? Aren't the 2 of them always fighting to be the first in all aspects? Unwilling to fall behind others? Why did they react so gently to my cheating behavior? In the beginning, Union thought that Colored Glaze and Dunya would have some complaints when they found out that she was pregnant. At the very least, it was inevitable that they would complain a little, but she didn't expect that the two of them would have such an attitude, as if they weren't jealous at all. What? You don't think I'm jealous of you, do you? As if sensing Union's surprise, Colored Glaze couldn't help but laugh. Only Dunya would do this kind of thing. I'm not that narrow-minded. Huh? What the hell? Is it okay to shoot at me? Dunya obviously didn't like to hear this, so she raised her head from Union's stomach and replied in a disdainful tone. The person who would do this kind of thing is obviously you, a woman with a heart as small as a sesame seed. Heart as small as a sesame seed? You actually have the face to say such things? 2 weeks ago, I borrowed Ryudo from you for a while, and you pissed me off for 3 days. You haven't done this kind of thing before? Didn't I take your favorite dish at the dinner party a month ago? And you were all kinds of sarcastic behind my back. Bringing up old scores, right? 3 months ago percent at. Yen asterisk at hashtag at. Hashtag yen hashtag asterisk. You're the one bringing up old scores. Clearly 6 months ago, hashtag at. Hashtag yen at hashtag asterisk percent. 9 months ago you xxxxx. 1 year ago you xxxxx. Seeing the two sisters quarrel in front of her again, Union forced herself not to say, "Stop quarreling. I think the two of you are really narrow-minded." But she also understood why the two of them didn't hold a grudge against her for secretly getting pregnant. The reason was very simple, because the one who was pregnant this time was Union, and not Colored Glaze or Dunya, so they weren't jealous. After all, Union was very popular and everyone liked her. And now, in Ryudo's harem group of 3, Colored Glaze and Dunya were the type that naturally clashed. One was a smart Japanese beauty, while the other was a martial artist. One was an intelligent Japanese beauty, while the other was a martial artist. Even the things they liked to eat were different. Colored Glaze liked to eat fish, shrimp, crab and other seafood, while Dunya liked to eat pancakes, sour cream, and barbecue, and both of them disdainful of each other's recipes. Fish, shrimp, crab? So disgusting, how could they eat it? Bye. Dunya pancakes with pancakes? Barbecue? Isn't that too? Bye. Colored Glaze in this kind of situation. The two of them had conflicts everywhere, but fortunately, Union was in the middle to act as a buffer, so they could barely get by. Speaking of which, Union was the kind of person who didn't have any special strengths, and didn't have any special preferences. To put it bluntly, she wasn't good at anything, and only had the charm of a witch. But it was also this kind of Union that could be the all-purpose lubricant in a team, making everyone like her. Even when she secretly got pregnant, Colored Glaze and Dunya sincerely congratulated her. On the other hand, if either Colored Glaze or Dunya got pregnant first, then the other would definitely flip the table in anger. Then it would become a civil war. But although the pregnancy didn't cause any problems, the two of them always quarreling was really a little troublesome. Seeing Colored Glaze and Dunya start to quarrel again, Union, who was sitting at lunch, couldn't help but sigh. Speaking of which, is there any way to improve their relationship? Unknowingly, Union started to think about this question in her mind. After all, they were going to live together as a family of 4. If 2 of them quarreled every day, then it was a kind of family misfortune, and they definitely wouldn't be happy every day. What should I do? Right. Why don't I take this opportunity to have a party at Ryudo's place? Everyone can happily quarrel for a night, and if we can relieve some of the tension, their relationship should improve a lot. Thinking of this, Union smiled and said to the two of them, Stop. Do you want to have a party at Ryudo's place tonight to celebrate the birth of my son? Birth of your son? Isn't your son still in your stomach? You don't seem to be able to describe it as a birth of your son. Just as Union finished speaking, Colored Glaze and Dunya ridiculed at the same time, and then fiercely glared at each other. You two. If only you could have such tacit understanding. After secretly sighing, Union convinced the two of them to attend the party tonight, and she told this news to Ryudo, who was a little troubled because he suddenly became a father. A party in my room? To improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunia's relationship? This seems to be possible. Ryudo nodded at this time, and in his mind, he also remembered the glorious daily quarrels between Colored Glaze and Dunia, the beautiful sisters. However, if they were going to have a gathering, then it would be better to prepare some snacks, drinks and alcohol. Although Senior Yunyan was currently pregnant and could not drink alcohol, those two fellows were still able to drink. As the saying goes, if you drink too much, you'll play with money. If you want to quickly improve the relationship, 3 to 5 glasses of alcohol and a few heartfelt words from the drunken stupor would definitely have a good positive effect. I've decided to get some alcohol, and tonight, I'll get Colored Glaze and Dunia drunk together, and let them speak the truth after drinking, and become good brothers after drinking. At the thought of this, Long Do immediately arranged for his assistant Ming Hai to buy the necessary supplies for the party. In particular, the drinks had to be sufficient, and they had to be the kind that ladies could drink. Then they waited for the night to come. Just like this, when night fell, a very festive scene appeared in Ryudo's room. Colored Glaze, Yunyan and Dunia, the 3 girls, very punctually came together to Ryudo's room. And at this time, a large table was placed in the middle of the room, and the table was filled with all kinds of snacks, drinks, party games, and so on, a very standard party scene. Whoa, this situation looks quite fresh. Seeing the 3 girls come together to his bedroom, Ryudo, who had never seen this scene before, couldn't help but nod slightly, and the corner of his mouth raised into an excited arc. During this period of time, whether it was Colored Glaze, Yunyan or Dunia, they had all been on the bed in this bedroom, cough cough, resting. But even so, it was the first time that the 3 of them appeared here together. Especially when Ryudo saw the big bed next to the table, and then looked at the 3 figures who had slept on the bed one after another. An evil thought emerged in his mind. Speaking of which, my bed is also quite big, if the 3 of them can sleep together. Creak. But just when Ryudo was thinking of something like sleeping together, accompanied by a creaking sound, Dunia suddenly jumped toward the bed. Oh, I'm so tired, this bed is still the most comfortable to lie on, After taking off her shoes, Dunia, who was wearing a gothic dress and lace stockings, curled up on Ryudo's bed, and raised her small feet and rolled on the bed while hugging the pillow, as if she was occupying her territory. Seeing Dunia occupying the bed she slept on, Colored Glaze on the side couldn't help but quickly stop her. Come down, it's rude. Hey, you're not the owner here. What right do you have to say that I'm rude? You, Colored Glaze, who was choked by Dunia, was naturally unconvinced, so she quickly took off her shoes and jumped onto the bed, occupying the other half of the bed that the petite body couldn't occupy. Ah, you're a smart one. Shameless. Who's learning from you? When I was lying on this bed, who knows where you were playing with mud? So what if you came early? At least you didn't come late. Chatter, crackle, crackle. Seeing these 2 girls quarreling over his bed, Ryudo could only use a helpless tone to say to them, Can you 2 stop arguing? Look at Yunyan. Wait. I have a share of this bed too. You can't exclude me. Before Ryudo could finish his words, Yunyan, who was next to him, quickly threw off her shoes and rushed to the bed in a loose dress, as if she was afraid that she wouldn't have a place to lie down if she was late. Are you kidding me? Yunyan is here too? And these guys? Is fighting for territory that fun? Seeing the 3 girls pushing and fighting on the bed, Ryudo didn't know whether to laugh or cry at first, but not long after, his eyes were fixed on them. Well, how should I put it? After going through the initial chaotic battle and entering the stage of close combat, the current situation on the bed was really pleasing to the eye. Colored Glaze, Yunyan, and Dunia were already absolute beauties. Now that they were lying and sitting together on the bed, it was inevitable that one would see their dresses flipped up and their slender legs entwined with each other. Especially those 3 pairs of beautiful legs. It was really amazing, needle-free, needle-free, needle-free. Among the 3 girls, Yunyan was the tallest. Her legs were also the longest, the fleshiest, the most voluptuous, and the best to touch. At this time, those voluptuous legs were wrapped in skin-tight nude stockings, rubbing on the bed, quilt, and pillow, easily attracting the attention of others. Of course, in terms of attracting attention, Colored Glaze and Dunia were not far behind. Although these two's legs weren't as voluptuous as Union's, they each had their own unique characteristics. The former's advantage was in its boniness, while the latter's advantage was in its petite size. Colored Glaze's legs were in between the other two, but because of her slender figure, those straight and slender legs looked very bony. Especially when paired with the black stockings that she often wore, it completely outlined the perfect shape of her legs, making people unable to help but want to hold her in their arms and caress her. Dunia's legs were a little short, but because her body was petite, her legs that looked short were especially cute. Paired with the gothic white lace stockings that she wore today, it brought out her petite and cute side to the extreme, making people want to put them in their mouth and taste them. Speaking of which, Ryudo had seen the legs of the three beauties and played with them from various angles, but he had never seen such a feeling of three flowers at one's prominence, three elements in one, and three parts of the world. Three different pairs of beautiful legs, respectively wearing nude, black, and white stockings, were even entangled and rubbing against each other on the bed. That beautiful scene really made Long Do almost unable to resist the urge to directly pounce on them and have a good time with them. But he couldn't. If Ryudo really pounced on them now, there was a high chance that he would be beaten up by both Colored Glaze and Dunia. So he had to be patient and wait for the right time to make his move. Chapter 325. In the beginning, Ryudo organized this gathering to improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunia. Now that he saw such a tempting scene, his purpose of organizing this gathering changed mysteriously. It became, improve the relationship between Colored Glaze and Dunia, so that they can accept sleeping together. At the thought of these three beauties resting here together, and at the thought of being entangled with a bunch of beautiful legs and arms early in the morning, Long Do felt that something was wrong with his entire being. How can I improve their relationship quickly and take advantage of them? I got it. Looking at the pile of poker cards on the table not far away, Ryudo suddenly had an evil idea, and that was the King's Game. The King's Game was a popular party game among the young people here, and the game required poker cards. If there were 4 people participating, then a total of 5 cards, a 2, 3, 4 and Joker, would be drawn for each of the 4 people to draw. After drawing, the person who drew the Joker would be the king. If no one drew the Joker, then it would be a walkover. And the king could choose any 2 players from 1 to 4 to do anything without looking at the other's numbers. For example, if the king ordered number 2 and number 4 to kiss, then the 2 players who drew number 2 and number 4 would have to do it in front of everyone. Of course, although the Joker could order others at will, the king himself was not in absolutely safe position. After all, there were 5 cards on the table, and after the other 4 people drew, the last card left on the table would be the king's number, and the king would not know what his number was. In other words, after the king ordered number 2 and number 4 to kiss, he would find out that number 2 was his card left on the table. Then it would be awkward. But this King's Game was special in that other than Ryudo, the other 3 participants were all beautiful girls, so there was no awkwardness. Anyway, Ryudo would not lose out no matter what he did with the other 3, and he would not lose out no matter what the other 3 did, so he would definitely be the final winner, Therefore, Ryudo quickly promoted this wonderful game to the 3 people on the bed, and then he was immediately met with 2 pairs of eyes. You actually suggested this game. Since you can take advantage of them however you want, you won't lose out, right? Although Colored Glaze had never played the King's Game before, after hearing the rules, she roughly knew what Ryudo, this old pervert, wanted to do. That's right, if you become the king, you will definitely give out some perverted orders. Who would want to play this game with you? It's fine in private. The last 6 words were whispered by Dunia. If it was in private, it was not like she couldn't accompany Ryudo if he gave out some perverted orders. But there were 2 other people here. Once she thought about being intimate with Ryudo under the gaze of the other 2. Dunya felt goosebumps all over her body, and she couldn't accept this. At this time, Yunyan obviously understood Ryudo's meaning, so she supported him by saying, "Don't say that. It doesn't have to be Ryudo who becomes the king. If the three of us become the king, we can embarrass him." Embarrass him? Yes, for example, let him use his nose to dance in circles on the plate, or learn to bark like a puppy, ha ha ha. Let Ryudo hold. Pfft. Thinking about that strange scene, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but laugh. "Okay, let's play then." "Yes, I have no objections." As if they were convinced by Yunyan's humorous description, the two of them, one civil and one martial, agreed to the request to start the king's game. Before starting the game, Luli even carefully checked the playing cards used for the game, wanting to see if Long Do, this rascal, had cheated on the cards. She only felt relieved after discovering that it was a new deck of cards. But what Colored Glaze didn't expect was that Ryudo didn't need to cheat in this way, because he had an item called Rogue's X-ray lens. Rogue's X-ray lens, as a contact lens, can be used to see through things within a certain range, such as seeing through the contents of other people's cabinets. Naturally, it was easy to see through the playing cards. In other words, in this king's game, who is the king? Who is the number? Ryudo knows everything. Hee hee. Hee hee hee. You two want me to bark like a dog? I'll let you know how the word death is written. When Ryudo and the other three sat around the table, and Yunyan was responsible for shuffling the cards, Ryudo's heart was already blooming with joy. The first round of the king's game begins. Oh, following senior sister Yunyan's command, the four of them reached out and grabbed a covered card from the table. TSK. The moment they saw the cards, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but pout, because the two of them grabbed 1 and 4 respectively. Neither of them was the king. As for who had the king's clown card, thank you. At this time, Ryudo casually raised the clown card in his hand and showed a happy expression to the three girls at the table. What a lucky guy. Hurry up and give the order. If that's the case, then number 1 and number 4 will drink half a glass of wine each. If it's Yunyan, replace it with bitter gourd drink. Because Yunyan was pregnant and couldn't drink, the rules of the game were lenient to her. But the other two weren't so lucky. When she heard that the punishment was to drink, Colored Glaze's face suddenly turned sour. But Dunya was relieved and smiled. It's just half a glass of wine, no problem. One had to know that Dunya was a little alcoholic, who could drink 50 to 60% vodka like water. Half a glass of vodka was nothing to her. Don't be happy too early. Colored Glaze wants to drink this kind of wine. You'll drink this. Under Dunya's stunned gaze, Ryudo threw a bottle of 96% life water on the table in front of Dunya. 96%. After seeing this, even Dunya couldn't help but swallow a mouthful of saliva. How is this wine? It's already higher than medical alcohol. Is this something humans drink? Even Dunya frowned when she saw it. But it had to be like this, after all. Everyone's alcohol tolerance was different. If he let Colored Glaze and Dunya drink the same wine, then it wouldn't be considered a punishment. It would just be a one-sided punishment for Colored Glaze. Of course, for Colored Glaze who didn't usually drink, half a glass of wine was already terrible, even if the wine was really good. This wine tastes good. It's not as bad as I imagined. After half a glass of wine slid down her throat, Colored Glaze couldn't help but lick her lips, recalling the feeling of the cold and fruity taste that filled her throat and nose. In the beginning, when Colored Glaze heard that Ryudo wanted her to drink wine, this young lady was somewhat afraid. After all, for Colored Glaze who didn't drink, wine was pungent, choking and spicy. It was hard to imagine that there was wine in the world that was so suitable for a lady to drink. After Ryudo's careful selection, the sparkling wine that Colored Glaze drank was sweet and not greasy. The alcohol content was only about 5%. It was very suitable for a lady who drank wine for the first time. So Colored Glaze drank half a glass without much effort. But even if that half a glass of wine was good, wine was still wine. After all, and Colored Glaze's little face became a little redder after drinking it. On the other side, Dunya, who drank half a glass of water of life, was even more miserable. She felt as if her throat was going to spit fire. She could only hurriedly grab some snacks and stuff them into her mouth. Because of the party, Narukai also prepared mini snacks to go with the wine, including cheese sticks, crab rolls, dried fish, grilled shrimp, small tomatoes, and so on. At a glance, it was obvious that it went well with the wine. Few Colored Glaze and Dunya put down their wine glasses at almost the same time and shouted to Ryudo, "Continue. Quickly begin. This time, I must take down the king." Humph. When it was Ryudo's turn to shuffle the cards, the two unlucky girls hurriedly reached out to grab the table. And after grabbing it, they looked as if the sky had fallen and the earth had cracked open. This time, Dunya was a 3, Colored Glaze was a 4, and neither of them were kings. "Yay, I'm the king, ha 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 ha." And King Yunyan, who got the Joker card, jumped up happily. But before Yunyan gave the order, she felt a hand quietly touch her leg under the table and wrote a 3 and a 4 on it. Was it Ryudo? "This number is..." "I understand, hee hee." Then, Yunyan smiled and said, "Then please hug number 3 and number 4 face to face for a minute immediately." "Hug? Who's number 4? Hug? Who's number 3? As soon as the two finished speaking, they looked at each other and shouted, "It's you!" TSK. After shouting, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but turn their faces away, as if they didn't want to hug her at all. What a joke, face-to-face hug, in a full minute. Who would do that? But at this moment, Ryudo casually ridiculed, "The king's order is absolute. You two can't afford to play, right?" Of course not. Let's hug. What's there to be afraid of? Let's play, humph." Since Ryudo said so, Colored Glaze and Dunya could only hug each other with a look of disdain. "Oh, this girl smells pretty good. And she's also very soft to hug. No wonder Ryudo likes to hug her." When Colored Glaze reached out to hug Dunya's petite body, smelling the vodka mixed with milk fragrance on her body, and feeling the smooth and soft skin, even Colored Glaze couldn't help but think so. "What's this smell? It smells like some kind of flower fragrance, and I feel so happy all of a sudden." And when Dunya reached out to hug Colored Glaze's slender waist, and leaned her head on the classic young lady's shoulder, even Dunya couldn't help but think so. This was the first time. The two had quarreled a lot, but this was the first time they hugged each other so intimately. After a minute, when Colored Glaze and Dunya separated, their expressions changed a little, and they didn't dare to look at each other's face, as if they were a little shy. Originally, the two drank a little, and now they were in a slightly tipsy state, and after hugging for a minute, they were a little dizzy. However, something even more embarrassing happened in the next round of the game. When Ryudo drew the Joker card again, he grinned and said in an excited tone, "I'm the king. I order number 1 and number 2 to kiss." Chapter 326. Number 1 and number 2 kiss. The moment they heard this command, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but tremble. But when they looked at the cards in their hands, they found that they had number 3 and number 4 respectively. Only then did they let out a sigh of relief. Wait. If that's the case, then number 1 and number 2 are. I'm number 1. Aya, Ryudo-kun, you're number 2 yourself. What a coincidence. When Yunyan flipped over the king's number card on the table, she raised the poker card in her hand and waved it slightly at Ryudo. "Is that so? Then it's Yunyan, and my turn to be punished." So, Ryudo quickly came in front of Yunyan and slowly pressed his cheek against hers. No way. Is he really going to kiss her? Seeing Ryudo and Yunyan's face getting closer and closer, Colored Glaze and Dunya, who were next to them, felt their scalps tingle. For the two of them, kissing under the gaze of two other people was really a scene that was not inferior to a public execution. If it really happened, it would be very difficult to accept. Naturally, Longdo knew this as well. That was why he didn't choose the two girls to kiss each other during the first kissing segment of the King's game. Instead, he chose to pull senior sister Yunyan, who was more open, into the kiss. Unlike the two of them, Yunyan's personality was not afraid of kissing in front of others. She might even enjoy this kind of situation. In the next moment, Ryudo kissed Yunyan. The soft and smooth jelly-like texture made him feel very comfortable. And Yunyan obviously enjoyed it. She even took the initiative to reach out and wrap her arms around Ryudo's neck. Soon she began to take the initiative. When Yunyan also began to counterattack, the heated scene suddenly stunned Colored Glaze and Dunya. Unlike Yunyan, who was used to taking the initiative, the two of them were usually the passive party when they were intimate with Ryudo. They rarely did this kind of action. So Yunyan and Ryudo are usually like this? That's amazing. So, seeing the two of them fighting fiercely, Colored Glaze reached out to cover her eyes while peeking through the gaps between her fingers. Dunya directly stared at them with her eyes wide open. Pop. After an unknown amount of time, number 1 and number 2 finally let go of each other's lips. Then, they looked at each other sweetly and sat back in their seats. At this time, Colored Glaze and Dunya, who had been watching from the side, were already blushing. It was as if they were even more embarrassed than Yunyan herself. Yunyan, on the other hand, turned her head with a smile and said, "Okay, let's continue the game. Next it's Dunya's turn to shuffle and deal." And okay. Not sure if it was because she saw Yunyan's slightly red lips, Dunya's body couldn't help but tremble. Then she dealt the cards very stiffly. In the first 2 rounds of the King's game, Ryudo and Yunyan were the victors. Logically speaking, it should be Dunya and Colored Glaze's turn to be the King's game. However, that was not the case. The 3rd round, the 4th round, the 5th round, the 6th round, in almost every round of the King's game, either Yunyan or Ryudo won. The other 2 basically didn't win, but they were punished the most. After an hour, Colored Glaze and Dunya had already drunk 3 or 4 glasses of wine. They hugged each other once, rolled around on the bed once, carried each other once, confessed once, combed each other's hair once, held each other's hands once. Anyway, it was basically done by them. It was almost time. These 2 should be drunk soon. Looking at Colored Glaze and Dunya, who were already drunk, Ryudo gave Yunyan a look. After taking down the King's game, he ordered, "Next, let's invite number 1 and number 4. Kiss while filming. Film while filming. Kiss while filming." When she heard this order, Colored Glaze, who was holding the number 1 card in her hand, was stunned. Then she looked at Dunya, who had taken out the number 4 card in her hand. Although she had drunk a lot now and wasn't very clear-headed, Colored Glaze still couldn't help but feel a chill all over her body. After all, although Colored Glaze was no longer a girl, the person she kissed was only Ryudo. When did she do such an intimate action with others? Even though Dunya was a woman, this kind of intimate mouth-to-mouth action was still a very sensitive thing. Even her best friends wouldn't do such a thing. What's more, the relationship between the 2 wasn't very good. It could even be said that they didn't see eye to eye. Wouldn't it be too awkward to let these 2 women kiss, and even film a video of it? So Colored Glaze quickly waved her hand and said, Wait, I'm a little tired. Can this King's game end here?" "You can, but you have to finish this round of punishment. You're not planning to deny it, are you?" "I'm not planning to deny it, but the problem is that this kind of thing." Before Colored Glaze could finish her words, Dunya's drunk little head suddenly appeared beside her. Whoosh! Then 2 seemingly slender arms, which actually contained a lot of strength, hugged Colored Glaze's waist from behind and threw her to the bed next to her. Plop! Accompanied by a muffled sound, Colored Glaze was thrown onto the bed dizzily. At the same time, Dunya jumped onto the bed and supported herself on top of her, giggling. You can't be scared, right? So timid, hee. It's over. This bastard is drunk. She doesn't know what she's doing." Seeing Dunya's blurred eyes and flushed cheeks, Luli knew that she must be completely delirious right now. Presumably, she hadn't been able to endure the devastation of the 96-degree water of life. Although Colored Glaze wasn't any better, she still had some rationality. She gritted her teeth and said, "Are you crazy? Is this something you can play with?" Why not? Didn't Ryudo and Yunyan just kiss? How are they the same as us? In the next second, Dunya had already lowered her cute little head. Her rose-red lips were less than 5 centimeters away from Colored Glaze. At this distance, the 2 could see all the details on each other's face, including long eyelashes, delicate skin, gentle pupils, etc. So, So cute. Her skin is so white, almost transparent. It's so wonderfully smooth. It's even smoother than tofu and jelly. Although Colored Glaze was usually unhappy when she saw Dunia, at this distance, she couldn't help but admire her old rival's stunning appearance. Originally, in terms of appearance, Dunia was the most beautiful of the three women, especially that flawless face of hers that was like a porcelain doll. It was enough to mesmerize Lioli, who was also a woman, just by looking at her. Seeing that the two were already in position, Ryudo also took out his phone and set it to recording mode. He said to the two girls on the bed, "Ready, counting down 3, 2. Hearing this, Colored Glaze, who was immersed in Dunia's pretty face, finally reacted. She hurriedly shouted to the side, "Hey, wait. Are you crazy? Are you really planning to?" 1. Chirp. As Ryudo's last word fell, Colored Glaze only felt a blur in front of her eyes. A smooth and delicate touch like wine and jelly was already pressed against her mouth. MMM. MMM. For a moment, Colored Glaze, who was almost kissed by force, couldn't help but struggle. But with her physical fitness, how could she move a little monster like Dunia away? It would only make her a laughing stock. But how to put it? After being kissed by Dunia for a few seconds, Colored Glaze couldn't help but feel her head heat up. Unknowingly, she was immersed in this special way of contact. So fragrant. So soft. It's completely different from when she was with Ryudo. Is this a girl? When Colored Glaze also reached out and wrapped her arms around Dunia's neck, and even began to wrap around her, Ryudo knew that his plan had succeeded. Whether it was under the influence of alcohol, under the shroud of this gaming atmosphere, or because they were already familiar with the bed, it was possible that some memories were brought back. In short, these two ladies who were usually incompatible like fire and water became one, and physically became one. Oh, that's amazing. It actually made the two of them so passionate. Looking at the exceptionally beautiful painting on the bed, even Yunyan couldn't help but cover her mouth with her hand, and said in a surprised tone. If someone told her before that Colored Glaze and Dunia would do such a thing, Yunyan would definitely think that person was crazy and spouting nonsense. But now that the reality had happened in front of her, she could only sigh at how deep Ryudo's tricks were. He actually led the two of them step by step into the abyss covered with lilies. Hee. Now that there's video evidence, if they quarrel again in the future, I'll play this video for them to see. Let's see if they still have the face to continue quarreling. As Longdo spoke, he looked at his phone. The video on his phone was still recording the battle of words between the two of them. It was really intense. Looking at it, Yunyan couldn't help but feel her body heat up. She reached out and hugged Ryudo's waist from behind, and laughed softly in his ear. How about we do it too? Aren't you pregnant? You can't be too excited in the first trimester, and the second trimester. It's okay, kissing is fine too, hee. This woman is really a vixen. After hearing Yunyan's chuckle in his ear, Ryudo couldn't help but carry her to the bed. As the bed curtain fell, the light dissipated, and the dark room gradually turned into a different kind of battlefield. As for what happened in this different kind of darkness, it was naturally the blooming of the lilies. Then, a man-eating flower swallowed 2 lilies together, and there was a rose cheering on the side. It was that simple. Chapter 327. Ryudo was naturally very satisfied with what happened in his bedroom last night. When he got up early in the morning and looked at Yunyan, Colored Glaze, and Dunia lying on the side, he actually had the heroic spirit of an emperor that said, "Look, this is my country." After all, other than the ancient emperors, there was probably no one in the world who could have 3 outstanding beauties at the same time. Moreover, he could let them sleep on the same bed. That feeling was simply amazing. However, early the next morning, when Colored Glaze and Dunia silently washed up, tidied up their clothes and went out for breakfast, Ryudo, who had been smiling since he woke up, quickly stopped smiling. Logically speaking, after last night's unprecedented King's game, Ryudo thought that the relationship between the two women should be much better. At least, they wouldn't quarrel every day like before. Who would have thought that while things were getting better, they were getting better too much? so much so that things were developing in a strange and extreme direction. At the dining table, Colored Glaze and Dunya intimately sat together. The two of them looked at each other, and there was a flash of electricity in their eyes. Sister Colored Glaze, try this. It's a strawberry biscuit with sour cream. It's delicious. Dunya had an orange smile on her face. She used a fork to pick up a small piece of biscuit from her plate and sent it to Colored Glaze's mouth. Colored Glaze also didn't hesitate to eat the food that Dunya sent over. After nodding, she said in an orange voice, Sister Dunya, try mine too. This grilled sori with lemon juice is not bad. It doesn't have any fishy smell. Oh really? I didn't like to eat fish before. But after trying it, I realized that the taste was really good. I became addicted immediately. Indeed, people have to try everything. If I didn't try sour cream biscuits, I would have thought that I only liked to eat fish. You can't be so inflexible. Don't be bound by fixed concepts. You have to accept more new things. That's right, that's right. If you don't free yourself, you'll never know what you really like. Hee hee. Just like that, Colored Glaze and Dunya chatted and laughed as they fed each other. It felt like they were a pair of very close sisters, or a pair of intimate lovers. Especially the topic they were talking about. Although they seemed to be talking about food on the surface, it felt as if they were talking about something else. They weren't talking about food at all. Clang! Ryudo was so frightened that he dropped his silver chopsticks on the table, making a soft sound. He quickly whispered into Yunyan's ear. What's going on with these two guys? Why did they become so close after last night? Don't you think it's too good? Yunyan was also surprised by the sudden change in her two sisters. She could only reply, well, maybe they developed a new hobby. New hobby? Don't tell me. It's the kind of thing you think. There can be love between women. It's not a rare thing. No, it can't be. Colored Glaze and Dunya, they got lesbian? Boom. When he saw that the harem at the dining table had become a couple and a pair of lesbians, Ryudo felt as if a bolt of lightning had struck him from the sky. It made his hair stand on end. God, I arranged the king's game yesterday in hopes that their relationship would improve a little. At least, they wouldn't quarrel all the time. But in the end it did improve, but it became too good all of a sudden. They became a pair of lesbians? Great. Now that my two wives have become lesbians, what am I left for? Just when Ryudo was shocked speechless by the scene in front of him, Colored Glaze, who had finished her breakfast, held Dunya's hand and stood up. She smiled and said, We'll be leaving first. Don't bother us if there's nothing. We're busy here. That's right, that's right. How about staying at your place tonight? Sister Colored Glaze's bed must be very soft. Sure, you can stay as long as you want. It's definitely better than the bed here. My harem. As Colored Glaze and Dunya held hands and left while blooming lilies, Ryudo, whose brain was boiling, could only gasp for air and fall into Yunyan's magnanimous motherly embrace. However, when Ryudo was stunned by his king's game, Colored Glaze and Dunya, who were holding hands and walking out of the Rulong Group headquarters, let go of their hands and looked at each other. Especially when the two got into the dancing costumes car and drove towards the Dory First High School. Dunya finally couldn't hold back her laughter and said, Puffed. Ha 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 ha. Did you see that? Ryudo's stunned expression just now. It was so satisfying. Serves him right. That bastard teamed up with Yunyan to mess with us. After getting into the car, Colored Glaze's face quickly returned to her usual calm expression. The previous blooming look of love immediately disappeared without a trace. From this angle, the two were clearly acting just now. They teamed up to put on a classic Lily's Last Forever, men get lost scene for her man. Wasn't that right? How could Lioli and Dunya be lesbians? They clearly both liked men. Even if they got drunk last night and got intimate in bed for a while, they wouldn't change their orientation so quickly. The reason why the two acted in front of Ryudo was mainly because Colored Glaze was unhappy, and so was Dunya. When the two woke up early in the morning, it wasn't difficult to think carefully. What happened last night was obviously that bastard Ryudo teamed up with Yunyan to set a trap for the two of them. If it wasn't for the trick, it wouldn't have been possible to play so many rounds of the king game. In the end, it was Colored Glaze and Dunya who got intimate with each other. This wasn't a coincidence. It was completely treating them like fools. Therefore, Colored Glaze teamed up with Dunya to put on the scene in the morning. The purpose was to teach Ryudo a lesson and let him know not to treat his wife like a fool. Otherwise, his wife would treat him like a fool. But I didn't expect our acting to be so realistic. It really gave that guy a big scare. Indeed, it seems that after quarreling for so long, we more or less developed some tacit understanding. At this point, Colored Glaze and Dunya couldn't help but look at each other and smile. It was more or less a feeling of forgetting their enmity with a smile. Speaking of which, the two of them didn't have any huge grudges between them. It was only because of their personalities and hobbies that they often had some minor friction, which was why they quarreled from time to time. However, after the indescribable incident last night and the lily-blooming incident in the morning, Colored Glaze and Dunya looked at each other more or less pleasing to the eye. Their conversation was also much smoother and more harmonious. From this point of view, Ryudo's goal of playing the king game last night had been completely achieved. The relationship between the two of them had indeed improved by quite a bit. But just as the two of them were chatting and laughing as they sat in the car in the dancing costume to head to school, a sudden commotion came from the street not far away. The commotion started with a woman's scream. Accompanied by the screams of that woman, a man whose muscles swelled unnaturally, and veins popped out from every part of his body. Like a mini bulldozer, he rampaged through the streets. Ha ha ha. Ha 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 ha. I'm the strongest. I'm invincible under the heavens. No one can stop me. When the man crazily ran through the street, and from time to time, he would use both hands to pull out fire hydrants and smash phone booths. The surrounding pedestrians were scared by this madman and fled in all directions. The scene suddenly became chaotic. That guy he's not normal. It seems like he took some kind of strange drug. The moment the man went crazy on the street, Dancing Costume unconsciously stopped the car and looked at the guy who was violently smashing phone booths about 100 meters away on the street. When anyone saw this guy, they would probably define him as a madman in their mind, because his actions were too terrifying, and that crazy expression and tone of voice made people feel that he wasn't a normal person. But before the arrival of the police, the surrounding pedestrians could only hurriedly flee in order to avoid being accidentally hit by this guy's fist. If they were hit, it would be no joke. Even the aluminum phone booths were as fragile as a piece of paper in his hands. Seeing this situation, Dancing Costume, as the guardian ninja, quickly asked Colored Glaze, "Miss, should I?" Originally, Dancing Costume wanted to ask, "Should I go deal with that guy?" But she didn't expect that before she could finish her sentence, Dunya's petite figure had already quickly opened the car door and rushed over there. When Dunya rushed over there, the somewhat cumbersome dress on her body was violently torn by the wind, as if she was using all her strength to whip it. Fast, too fast. Almost everyone present only saw a blur, and that petite figure had already arrived in front of the crazy brawny man. Then, that slender hand grabbed and pulled, and in the midst of the claw, 4 waves of bone-cracking sounds came from the brawny man's 4 limbs. Boom! Even the brawny man himself didn't have time to react. His knees and shoulders were already shattered, and his body fell to the ground like a pile of mud. What's going on? Why can't I move? I'm the most. Shut up, you idiot. Seeing that the burly man was still talking nonsense on the ground, Dunya casually kicked out with her foot, kicking his consciousness out of the sky. From the moment Dunya appeared to the moment the brawny man's limbs were shattered, and he fell to the ground unconscious, only about a second had passed. This scene was more magical than a movie, and all the surrounding audience were stunned, and they even mistakenly thought that they were daydreaming. Chapter 328. That guy just now was obviously abnormal. He must have taken some strange anesthetic. This is the 3rd time I've seen this situation recently. Not long after, when Dunya got back into the car and drove toward Dory First High School, she couldn't help but say to Colored Glaze, who was deep in thought. Indeed, there had been a sudden increase in similar situations recently, whether it was in the underground arena, in various dojos, or in dark corners. Dunya could always see or hear similar strange things. Today it even happened on the street. Luli naturally knew the reason for this abnormal situation better than anyone else. That's because the Heavenly Eye group is secretly distributing Hell Butterfly in batches. Although it's a weakened version, it's enough to make some people lose their self-control. When this matter was mentioned, Colored Glaze also had a headache, because this was indeed not a problem of one or two people, but a problem that had developed to the whole world. Since a month ago, this kind of thing had been happening from time to time. Asia, Europe, South America, Africa. Almost every country and every continent had this kind of abnormal physical state caused by the use of anesthetics, and cases of the mind becoming manic. According to the investigation of Colored Glaze and the others, these signs were very similar to the Hell Butterfly that Ryudo encountered before. However, the anesthetics that appeared in large batches now were not as strong as the Hell Butterfly. The increase in physical ability was more limited, and it was not to the extent of sudden death on the spot after the effect of the drug. At most they would become disabled. From this point of view, the anesthetics that those people took should be called weakened Hell Butterfly. After taking it, it would only cause the physical ability to increase, and the mind to become extremely excited. It was not as exaggerated as the original version, as if they had become a modified monster. But even so, the appearance of this kind of weakened Hell Butterfly in such a large area really confused many people in this world. Where did this thing come from? Where did it come from? Needless to say, Colored Glaze and the others knew that the Heavenly Eye group deliberately let these anesthetics flow into the market. In addition to the anesthetics raging under the surface of the water, the already chaotic situation in the Middle East had become even more chaotic this month. The small countries and forces that were fighting against each other suddenly obtained a batch of elite weapons and instantly expanded the scope of the war by a few levels. The group of terrorists even kidnapped a large number of foreign journalists and staff stationed in the Middle East and demanded large amounts of ransom from the countries they belonged to. Because of this incident, the international community had long been thrown into chaos. There was the threat of war on the outside and anesthetics on the inside. Under such circumstances, the stock prices of various countries plummeted. The world was like a powder keg that had been squeezed to the limit and could explode at any time. In just 1 month, the world had become like this. It was unimaginable that it was definitely that woman, Tenmu Ayam, who was calling the shots behind the scenes. Good heavens! I still underestimated her. I didn't expect her to be able to go to such an extent. If she was allowed to complete the final decapitation operation, then the world would really be in chaos. Thinking of this, Colored Glaze couldn't help but sigh. According to Ryudo, the Heavenly Eye group provided a large number of weapons and equipment to fund the war, played the economic card to mess up the financial system, and sold anesthetics everywhere to cause chaos. Her last move should be the decapitation operation. The so-called decapitation operation was to set up Black Feather Ninja assassins around the leaders of the major countries in the world. When the time was right, all the assassins would take action at the same time and directly assassinate the leaders of more than 100 countries. This situation had already been experienced by Ryudo in Red Album 2. No one survived, so Ryudo could completely predict it. It could be said that the Heavenly Eye group was preparing to play a set of combination punches that had been planned for a long time. Anesthetics, firearms, kidnapping, assassination. With such a set, the result was that the world was in chaos. The other countries were in deep trouble for various reasons and couldn't pay attention to other countries' affairs. At this time, Ayam, who had already controlled the cabinet, Congress, Metropolitan Police Department, and other institutions, began to do whatever she wanted in this country and eliminate dissidents until the sixth demon's wrath, a large nuclear bomb, was completed and Japan was annihilated. This plan sounded somewhat whimsical, but the problem was that Ayam really had the ability to realize it. This was the most terrifying part. After listening to Colored Glaze's explanation, Dunya couldn't help but sigh. Then what do we do now? Watch them do things? Not necessarily. Ryudo has already begun to gather the various forces of the underground world to prepare for a counterattack. Let's hope their plan can go smoothly. Speaking until here, Colored Glaze couldn't help but turn her head to look at the Rulong Group HQ that the two of them left. If she didn't remember wrongly, Longdo would be meeting with the leaders of the underground world tonight to explain the cause of the anesthetics epidemic in the underground world and discuss how to solve it. The leaders invited this time included the former leader of the Rulong Group, Yima, the leader of the Big Dipper Alliance, Kai Yang, the leader of the Black Snake Alliance, Tessa, the leader of the Sai River Plain, Huashang, the leader of the Among clan, as well as 4 to 5 other underground forces and so on. Because the people invited to this meeting were the most powerful figures in the underground world, this meeting could be considered as a major event in the entire underground world. In order to increase his influence, Ryudo even invited his old man back from overseas. He had almost called all the people he could call. Therefore, on the same night, in the underground meeting room of the lawless land, Sai River Plain, a huge round table was already filled with people. The people around the round table were men and women, old and young. There were tough men in neat white suits, greasy uncles in gamblers' cloaks, beautiful young women and stern men. But no matter what their appearance was, this group of people without exception emitted a peculiar aura. They emitted a gloomy aura that was obviously caused by living in the underground world for a long time and lacking sunlight. Boss Yima, long time no see. I didn't expect Boss Ryudo to call you back. It's great to see Boss Yima here. With you and your father here, it's as stable as Mount Tai. Speaking of which, is this meeting to discuss the recent anesthetics incident? Those lunatics have almost driven me crazy. Who is the one behind the distribution of those strange drugs? Taking advantage of the time when the person who called this meeting had not arrived, the group of leaders seated around the table greeted their acquaintances. Some even started chatting, excluding their special identities. If one only looked at the actions of this group of people, perhaps no one would think that this was actually a group of underworld bosses gathering here. It didn't seem too different from a normal gathering of friends. Especially Yima, who had just returned, he naturally received a warm welcome. Even the flower merchant and the others were concerned about his well-being and paid extra attention to him. Yima also exchanged greetings with everyone while sighing at the changes in the world. If it was a few years ago, although he was considered a figure in the extreme Tao, he wouldn't have been able to receive so much respect from these underworld bosses. The reason why Yima was able to receive such treatment was mainly because his Rulong group had an excellent successor. In the more than a year when Yima was on the run, Ryudo had almost made the Rulong group the king of the country's extreme Tao. Now when the underworld mentioned extreme Tao, the first thing that came to mind was Ryudo. At the same time, only the current dragon battle could gather more than half of the leaders of the underground world to participate in this meeting. This was something that could only be done with a lot of face. Tap, tap, tap. Not long after, along with a series of almost inaudible footsteps, a young man wearing a white suit with a black dragon pattern entered the meeting room and sat at the head of the table. The moment he appeared, the clamor in the room became incomparably quiet. Almost everyone obediently shut their mouths and looked at this young leader of the Black Hand Alliance, and even the entire underground world. First of all, thank you very much for accepting my invitation to participate in this meeting despite your busy schedule. I'm sure everyone is very clear about the purpose of this meeting. It is the various chaos that has occurred in the underworld and the surface world recently. As the convener of this meeting, Ryudo first briefly introduced the weakened hell butterfly that was currently rampant in the underworld. Then he brought out the source of this matter, which was the Heavenly Eye Group. Good Lord, it's actually the Heavenly Eye Group. What are they planning to do? Are they crazy? They are arms dealers. They probably plan to mess up the world so that they can reap the benefits. Aren't all arms dealers like this? From the looks of it, they are also involved in the situation in the Middle East. What a bunch of scum. After hearing about the Heavenly Eye Group, the group of extreme Tao bosses couldn't help but start to angrily scold. After all this time, the Heavenly Eye Group spread the weakened hell butterfly on a large scale in the black market. The residents of the underworld were the biggest victims. Naturally, they had been suppressing their anger for a long time. Seeing that the emotions of the participants had been stirred up by him, Ryudo continued. So now we should. Not good. Boss, watch the TV. Something big is happening. Just as Ryudo was about to announce the establishment of the Underground Alliance Army to attack the subordinate companies of the 4 departments one by one, Sensible's voice suddenly came from the electronic screen not far away. Immediately after, the live TV program immediately popped up on the screen. The Prime Minister's special announcement. When everything was over, Ryudo and the others immediately saw the thin old man standing on the podium in a suit. The current Prime Minister of Nippon and Yatsuki, Golden Heron, Shinzo Tanagawa. Chapter 329. Shinzo Tanagawa? As the Prime Minister, why did he suddenly start this kind of public speech? Why wasn't there any news beforehand? Longdo, who was sitting in the main seat, couldn't help but frown when he saw the skinny old man on TV. He had to admit that the timing was really sensitive. There were just signs of chaos in the world. And the underground world's ghetto were also preparing to crusade against the Heavenly Eye Group. But the Prime Minister on TV suddenly gave a public speech. The most important thing was that he didn't receive any information about this speech. Even Kyoji, who was also a golden heron, didn't know that this golden heron would do this. At the same time, the Prime Minister on the television took a deep breath and said in a heavy tone, "To the viewers in front of the television, I'm very sorry to disturb your daily lives with this emergency announcement. But even so, I have to explain the current situation to the people of our country." The people? Give an explanation? What kind of explanation is he going to give? Hearing this, the ghetto bosses sitting around the round table couldn't help but show a puzzled expression. A situation like this where the Prime Minister suddenly came out to make an emergency announcement was rare even in the past. Basically, it was only possible to see it after some very special natural and man-made disasters. At this time, the current Prime Minister, Shinzo Tanagawa, who was in the studio, reported solemnly, "I believe that our citizens have recently discovered that some strange drugs have appeared in various cities of our country. After being taken, these drugs will cause mental and physical problems, which will then lead to all kinds of riots." When the Prime Minister said this, the television began to play some strange muscle-bound men fighting on the streets, brawling or rampaging. For this situation, the ghetto bosses present were very familiar with it. After all, since the weakened hell butterfly was widely circulated in the black market recently, such muscular men often appeared. But why? Why did the Prime Minister suddenly interrupt this kind of emergency announcement at this time? Wait, could it be? That guy isn't planning to. Just when Ryudo followed this thought, and thought for a while from the perspective of Shinzo Tanagawa, his eyes suddenly widened as he thought of a very troublesome possibility. Today's Ryudo had already reached the level of LV5 resource, extreme Superman in wisdom. Although he usually didn't like to use his brain, when he really needed to use his brain was still very fast. So when he saw the Prime Minister suddenly mention that drug in front of the whole country, Ryudo quickly thought of the worst possibility. As expected, Ryudo's guess was correct, because at the next moment, the Prime Minister on TV slammed the table and shouted in an impassioned tone, "Who is it? Who secretly allowed this drug to circulate everywhere? I believe that the people already have the same answer. It's the extreme gangsters who live like rats in the underground world." What? When the Prime Minister on TV changed the topic and put the blame on everyone present, even the calmest Itsuma couldn't help but widen his eyes. And the hot-tempered flower merchant quickly slammed the table and stood up, shouting, "Bullsh*T. This bastard actually intends to put all the blame on us. What is this? Is he picking on the weak?" Everyone present was well aware that the weakened hell butterfly was not a drug that was circulated in the underground world at all, because this anesthetic destroyed the order of the underground world. Who would do such a thing in their own territory? But it was useless. No matter how angry they were, they had to admit one thing. That was, the residents living in normal society would never think that they were innocent. For ordinary people, the gangsters who lived in the underground society were a group of dregs of society. They were a group of evil people who would do anything for money. It was natural for them to sell illegal drugs. In other words, from the moment the Prime Minister raised his arm and shouted on TV, they had already firmly shouldered the blame, and there was no room for protest. Just when this group of extreme gangsters of the underground world were angry, the Prime Minister on TV still did not stop his performance. He said in a very provocative tone, "Why did this happen? It's because we are too weak. It's because we turned a blind eye to the evil under the sun. It's because we didn't put all the gangsters in prison. But it's not too late to make up for this mistake." Voila! As the Prime Minister stretched out his hand, a huge screen fell from behind him, and the names of many organizations were densely written on the screen. Looking carefully, such as Rulon Group, Big Dipper Alliance, Black Snake Alliance, Sai River Plain. Almost all the underground organizations that could be named in Japan were neatly marked on it. Is this our organization name? Is this old man planning to? Seeing these densely packed names, some of the people present had already guessed what Tanago Ajinzo would say in a while. Remember these. These are the people who made trouble in Japan. These are the group of cockroaches that made this country fall into chaos. Sure enough, the Prime Minister walked to the screen and slapped the names on it one by one, and his tone gradually became gnashing teeth. Finally, he suddenly picked up the microphone and shouted, "So now I officially announce that Japan will launch the most severe extreme gangster bill in history from tomorrow onwards. This group of trash that brings disaster to the world will not be spared, and all of them will be expelled. Banish them from this beautiful and sacred country." Immediately afterward, the specific content of the so-called extreme gangster bill began to play on the screen. It included but was not limited to: all extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from attending any school. All extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from joining any company. All extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from applying for bank cards. All extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from taking trams, subways, trains, planes, taxis, and other operating means of transportation. All extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from entering restaurants, hospitals, hotels, supermarkets, entertainment venues, and other operating places. All extreme gangster members and their immediate family members are prohibited from buying any real estate. Because they were too shocked, they didn't even know what kind of expression they should make. Good gangster bill. It really wants to drive people to the brink of extinction. Even if Ryudo had already expected that the Prime Minister would be ruthless to the extreme gangster chosen by them, he didn't expect that guy to be so ruthless. If this bill was really enacted, then almost all the residents of the underground world would be completely exterminated, and it would be difficult for them to even survive. Because according to the bill, the group of people defined as extreme gangster could do almost nothing in this country. They couldn't work, they couldn't study, they couldn't shop, they couldn't take public transportation. And it wasn't just them. Even their whole family would be punished. This punishment was really killing. This meant that it was impossible for an extreme gangster to go out and buy a pack of cigarettes. Even if he asked his wife, mother, or daughter to go out and buy cigarettes, they would be refused to sell because they were the extreme gangster's immediate family members. In other words, when a person's identity as extreme gangster was exposed, he would have to face a real social death in this country. That is, his whole family would be separated from the whole society, as if they were on a deserted island. No wonder Tanago Ajinzo said that he wanted to expel all the extreme gangsters. Wasn't it just expulsion? Under this extremely harsh bill, how could there be any extreme gangsters living here? Not long after, when the emergency program ended, the underground conference room in the Sai River Plain was dead silent, as if everyone was stunned by what they had just heard. Life and death. Now the entire Tokyo, and even the entire Japan's underground world, had truly entered a period of life and death. And it was because they were the scapegoats that caused it to become like this. Crack. A few minutes later, Tong Shun Kazuma, who was sitting at the round table, couldn't help but hit the table with his fist, smashing a clear round hole on the table. Then he said in a tone that sounded calm, but contained a raging fire. If it's because of our fault that we are being treated like this, then there's nothing to say. But if it's because we have to be punished for others, and let the real mastermind behind the scenes go unpunished, I'm not convinced. I know I'm convinced. 3 simple words, but Tong Xingyima, the leader of this old Taoist clan, was crying bitterly. Of course he wasn't convinced. Why should he be convinced? The anesthetic was obviously spread by the Heavenly Eye group. But in the end, the Prime Minister's side targeted the underground world and wanted to exterminate this group of extreme Taoists who had been driven to live in the dark like mice without seeing the light of day? Who would be convinced by this kind of thing? Who wouldn't feel aggrieved in their heart? They even wanted to go out and find someone to fight to vent their puzzlement. However, even at this moment, there was still a person at the round table who maintained a calm expression. And this person was naturally Ryuto Kiryu, who was the first to see what Tanagoa Jinzo wanted to do, and had already thought of countermeasures. After a while, Ryuto smiled and said, "Everyone, let's not talk about what happened just now. Let's follow the original plan and discuss how to deal with the Heavenly Eye group first." Hearing Ryuto's words, Kaiyang took a deep breath and said with a bitter smile, "Although that's the case from tomorrow onwards, we will definitely encounter all kinds of survival problems. Should we postpone the confrontation with the Heavenly Eye group ? If it was said that before seeing the emergency report, this group of underground world bosses really wanted to teach them a lesson when they found out that the anesthetic was spread by the Heavenly Eye group behind the scenes. But now, their mood had already become much lower. After all, what was in front of them was a real problem of survival. They didn't even dare to think about how many of their subordinates would run away when the sun rose as usual tomorrow. How could they be in the mood to deal with the enemy? On the contrary, the matter just now was instigated by the Heavenly Eye group. If we want to clear our names, we have to completely defeat them. What? The moment these words were said, everyone was shocked. When Yima heard this, he frowned and said, "The Heavenly Eye group is behind this. It can't be, right? That's the Prime Minister of the country. Could it be that even the Prime Minister of the country has to listen to their orders? It could also be that the Prime Minister who didn't listen to orders is already dead, so they replaced him with this Prime Minister who listens to orders. Leader who listens to orders. So that's how it is. Is it a substitute?" After being hinted at like this, most people immediately thought of this possibility that sounded a bit ridiculous, but could be the truth. If the current Prime Minister had already been replaced by a substitute by the Heavenly Eye group, and then stuffed a large number of their own people into the cabinet and parliament, then they could indeed achieve such a level of power. Too scary. Hearing this, Tessa couldn't help but frown. Then how powerful is the Heavenly Eye group? They plan to control this country? They don't intend to control this country, but to destroy it. As far as I know, they're secretly building the largest nuclear bomb in history. The kind that's 100 times more powerful than Fatty and Little Boy. Hiss! Instantly, everyone around the round table was shocked. After all, these words were a bit too exaggerated. If the largest nuclear bomb in history were to explode in this small island country, wouldn't that mean Japan would sink? Phew. Hearing this, Kaiyang sighed. Although I don't care if this island sinks or not, my family business and brothers are all on it. I can't lose it just like that. Indeed, although there is an option to retreat, that should be left for the end. When we are sure that we can't stop the Heavenly Eye group, then we will consider it. From the looks of it, this country is already controlled by the Heavenly Eye group. Then wouldn't we, who are going against the Heavenly Eye group, become saviors in a sense? Ha ha ha. To think that a bunch of underground extreme Tao cultivators, like us would become the saviors of the world, and that group of upper-class people would become the big bad guys. The world is really changing fast. Just like this, everyone started chatting and laughing. The surrounding air gradually became less oppressive. Even a bit of heroism appeared in everyone's heart. Creatures like humans would become very strong when there was something they needed to fight for. When they found out that the Heavenly Eye group did not only want to occupy this country, but also wanted to destroy everything, everyone present understood that they had no way out. Even if they could escape, under the shroud of the upheaval that might happen next, their relatives, friends, and acquaintances might not be able to escape. Since that was the case, they might as well fight with all their might. They might as well fight until the sky turned dark and the earth turned bright. Seeing that everyone finally had some momentum of unity, Ryudo clapped his hands and smiled. It's decided then. After returning, calm down your subordinates. Tomorrow afternoon, we will begin the battle distribution plan and begin an all-out attack on the Heavenly Eye group. We must let the whole world see the backbone of the extreme Tao. Oh, attack them. We must let the whole world see our backbone. Following Ryudo's adjourn, all the extreme Tao bosses in the Tokyo region walked back with their heads held high and chests puffed out to prepare for the next battle. Perhaps it would also be their last battle. In this battle there would definitely be a lot of deaths. But even so, no one wanted to retreat, because they couldn't retreat. After the meeting was adjourned, Yima came in front of Ryudo and said in a praising tone, "Since ancient times, the so-called extreme Tao is the aggregation of people who are free from society. Those who are isolated by society and have no place to stay, the extreme Tao will give them a place to stay." Ryudo also replied, "And as the leader of the extreme Tao, what we need to do is to protect this place and become the power that the lonely people can always rely on. Is that right?" "That's right. You are now a more qualified and powerful extreme Tao than me. It seems that I really misjudged you back then. I'm very sorry." Although he was facing his own son, Yima still reached out and patted Ryudo's shoulder and solemnly expressed the most sincere apology to him. Thinking back, Yima had always been unwilling to let Ryudo walk on the path of extreme Tao. He hoped that his son could live out his life as an ordinary person. Now it seemed that that kind of thinking was simply wrong. In just a year or two, Ryudo had already climbed to a height that even Yima couldn't reach. This was something that Yima never dreamed of. At this time, Ryudo also said to his physical father, "Next is the time to determine the winner. Pops, I will also take revenge for your wrongful imprisonment back then." Until now, Ryudo still remembered how Yima was imprisoned and how he was sentenced to 30 years in prison. There was no doubt that it was the Heavenly Eye group behind this. This was great. New hatred and old hatred, all paid off in one go. This time, Ryudo wouldn't wait for Iam to use some dirty tricks to mess with him. Instead, he planned to take the initiative and completely eradicate the Heavenly Eye group. However, after hearing his son's words, Yima shook his head and smiled. "My hatred doesn't matter. The key is you. You are still young, and you still have 3 women. You must go back alive to reunite with them. Do you understand? Okay, after I finish this battle, I will go back and marry the 3 of them." In front of his physical father, Ryudo patted his chest and promised, as if he didn't notice that he just made a huge mistake. But so what? A true powerhouse dared to face a bloody life, and dared to plant a flag before going to the battlefield. Just like that, following the end of this unprecedented Tokyo-Kyoto conference, an unprecedented war slowly began to surge under the surface of the water. It had to be said that for this war, Ryudo and others would probably pay a huge price and be forced to give up a lot of things. What Ryudo didn't expect was that in the morning of the second day, the first thing he had to give up was also a phone call. Chapter 331. Ding ling ling. Ding ling 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 ling. The next morning Ryudo, who was sleeping, was woken up by a phone call. Ryudo didn't lie down to rest until late at night, because he had a lot of work scheduled last night. He didn't plan to go to school again, so he decided to sleep in. From the moment the Extreme Tao Expulsion Act was introduced, Ryudo no longer had the right to go to school. After all, according to the law, it was illegal for him, the leader of the Extreme Path organization, to go to school. The principal of Dori First High School, Adolf, was a good person and had taken care of Ryudo many times. Ryudo didn't want to cause trouble for him, so he simply stopped going to school and quietly cut ties with the other side. Who knew that Ryudo thought so, but the others obviously didn't think so. Hence, early in the morning, Longdo picked up the phone and heard Gao Yuan's unhappy voice from the other side. "Hey boss, something happened at the school." "The school? What happened?" "A bunch of bastards gathered at the entrance of the office building early in the morning to protest. They said they wanted to force the principal to expel you." "Then asked the principal to expel me. But Headmaster Adolf insisted on not expelling you. And he also refused to acknowledge the Extreme Dao Expulsion Act." Was Old Master Adolf that stubborn? Longdo's brows furrowed when he heard Gao Yuan's words. The reason why Ryudo didn't go to school himself was that he didn't want to be a burden to Adolf, the staff, and the other students. However, if something like this happened, it would go against his wishes. "I'm on my way. I'll be there soon." After hanging up the phone, Ryudo immediately called for the fastest driver and rushed all the way to Dori First High School. At the same time, just as Ryudo was rushing here, a series of verbal sparring was going on in front of the First High School office building. Early in the morning, when everyone should have just arrived at school, a large group of students did not go to class. Instead, they ran to the office building where Adolf worked and raised a large banner with the words, "Ryudo Kiryu get out. Extreme Hooligan get out," written on it. It wasn't as simple as just holding up a banner. Under the leadership of Yamado Tanaki, a young man with an overbearing expression on his face, they even shouted some insulting slogans in the direction of the principal's office. 3, 2, 1. Fire this damn hooligan, or get off the stage. Fire the damn hooligan. Otherwise, get off the stage. One more time. Fire the damn hooligan. Otherwise, get off the stage. Under the leadership of Watanabe, a group of students shouted their slogans vigorously. The scene looked somewhat intimidating. Upon closer inspection, almost all of the protesters were boys, and most of them were strong and athletic boys. They should be the ones who were humiliated by Ryudo at the first martial arts tournament. Watanabe, who was in charge of leading them, was even more influential. He was one of the culprits who was beaten up by Ryudo and thrown into the ICU, which led to the royal family breach incident. He was also one of the culprits who indirectly caused the death of Watanabe. Maybe it was because he was in the ICU, but after watching the Prime Minister's speech yesterday, Watanabe took full advantage of his family's tendency to cause trouble and brought a group of athletic boys to Adolf. Just as this group of guys was protesting outside, there was also a chaotic scene in the principal's office. Principal Adolf, why don't you do me a favor and write an expulsion notice? Then this matter will be settled." Looking at a large group of students outside demanding the expulsion of Ryudo, a school board member could not help but wipe the sweat on his forehead with a handkerchief and said to Adolf, who was sitting behind the principal's desk, "I've said it many times. That's impossible. I will never expel Tongsheng." But Adolf still shook his head and once again refused with righteous words. At this time, the old gentleman in a suit had a cold face and a serious tone. He was completely different from the usual old man who liked to dance. "Principal Adolf, why are you so stubborn? Isn't it just expelling a student? And that is the Extreme Expulsion Act. You are just abiding by it. Didn't you teach law before? You should be very law-abiding." Seeing that Adolf still refused to expel Ryudo, the school board member was as anxious as an ant on a hot pan. "It is precisely because I am a law teacher that I cannot abide by the Extreme Expulsion Act, which is obviously abnormal. I have lived for most of my life, and I have never seen such a law trampling on the law." When he said the second half of the sentence, Adolf could not help but sigh. As an old professor who taught at the Tokyo University of Law and Politics for decades, Adolf naturally knew the laws and regulations like the back of his hand, but he had never seen such a shameless piece of garbage as the Extreme Expulsion Act. In particular, It involved a series of provisions that deprived the life rights of extreme Tao. It was simply shameless. Anyone with a little legal knowledge should know that it was completely unreasonable. Therefore, Adolf was determined not to expel Ryudo, because it meant that as a professor, he lost to unreasonable power, lost to the shameless prime minister. But it was useless for Adolf to think about it. Now the public's resentment toward extreme Tao had been mobilized. Looking at the tsunami-like protests outside, it was clear that it was no longer Adolf's business whether to expel Ryudo or not. Unknowingly, more and more people gathered outside the office building, and the wave of protests was getting bigger and bigger. After all, Ryudo's reputation in the school was not too good, especially some of the boys. After learning that the bastard had a scandal with the two campus beauties, Union and Colored Glaze, they saw him as the murderer of their father, and wanted him to die as soon as possible. Expel Ryudo! Expel Ryudo! Expel Ryudo! Extreme Tao go to hell! Extreme Tao go to hell! Extreme Tao go to hell! Unknowingly, under the leadership of Awatanaki, the protests were getting louder and louder, and the surrounding crowd was getting bigger and bigger. Some people even began to use their mobile phones to broadcast the scene online. The situation was getting more and more out of hand. Seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, Adolf could only go downstairs with a few school board members and teachers with resentment. He sternly said to the group of students, "Are you done?" No. When the leader, Awatanaki, saw the principal appear, he suddenly smiled and said loudly, "As long as you don't expel Ryudo Kiryu, we will continue to cause trouble, right? Yes, that little bastard Ryudo Kiryu has no right to study here. Let all the extreme Tao go to hell. A bunch of social trash. How can they be here? Expel him quickly, then publicly apologize. Otherwise, you won't be able to continue being the principal." After seeing the old principal who had been working here for many years, the group of boys became more and more excited. Their voices became louder and louder, and some even began to use foul language and personal attacks. "Quiet! Quiet! Don't make a ruckus here." The other teachers began to try their best to calm the students, but it was to no avail. Even Awatanaki, who was standing at the front, laughed and said, "Don't think that you can suppress this matter with your status, old man Adolf. You are not worthy. This is the law that the Prime Minister is pushing. Does the Prime Minister know? Compared to the Prime Minister, you are nothing." Adolf replied righteously, "No one can distort the justice of the law. Ryudo has the right to study here. This is my judgment as a law professor." "Professor? So what if you are a professor? Give me some face and I call you a professor. If you don't give me face, you are just an old dog." Just as Awatanaki was pointing at Adolf's nose and scolding him, he did not notice that the noisy voices behind him had quieted down. "Is that so?" At this time, Adolf sneered. "You are now pointing at my nose and scolding to your heart's content. Do you dare to say the same thing to Ryudo when he comes here? Why not? Who does he think he is? A stinking hooligan. Everyone has the right to punish him." Pat pat. When Awatanaki was scolding to his heart's content, a hand suddenly reached out from behind and patted him on the shoulder. "Don't pat me. I am not done yet. That guy should have died a long time ago. If my sister was still here, Terusei Ryudo would be hanging on the gallows by now. His tongue would be hanging out of his mouth, and I would still be on top of his head." Terusei Ryudo's voice trailed off. Pat pat pat. Before he could finish his sentence, the hand behind him patted him on the shoulder again. After being patted for the second time, Awatanaki turned his head impatiently and scolded, "What are you patting? Can't you see that I am?" In just a short sentence, Kawada Tamaki's tone changed from passionate to terrified. His face turned paler than a sheet of paper, as if he would faint at any moment. "Go on." Suddenly Ryudo, who was standing behind Awatanaki, showed a relaxed smile and encouraged him. "What do you want to do on my head? Do you want to break dance?" Dragon, brother Ryudo. I was just joking, please don't take it seriously." The moment he saw Ryudo, the muscles on Awatanaki's face twitched, and he forced a flattering smile. His legs began to tremble violently, and yellow water stains even appeared on his crotch. However, Ryudo didn't even look at him. Instead, he walked past Awatanaki and came in front of Adolf. "Ryudo, why are you here at this time?" "Principal Adolf, I am here to deliver the withdrawal application. Please accept it." After nodding to Adolf, Ryudo took out a small envelope from his pocket and handed it to the principal. Long-do had casually written this letter of withdrawal when he was on the way here. Although the handwriting was a little ugly, it was enough to convey the meaning of the letter. Chapter 332. Ryudo, do you really want to do this? Looking at the withdrawal application in front of him, Adolf's feelings were somewhat complicated. Without a doubt, Ryudo wrote the application at the last minute after knowing the situation here, in order to not make things difficult for Adolf. Compared to Adolf's appearance, he was actually very stubborn. He would probably rather resign than expel Ryudo. In this case, Ryudo submitting the withdrawal application himself was obviously the best solution. Adolf didn't have to go against his beliefs, and he didn't have to be besieged by this group of stinky brats. "Take it, after the matter is resolved. I will come back." Ryudo nodded and forcefully stuffed the application into Adolf's hands, but said in a very gentle tone, "Yes, after the matter is over. After the matter of the Heavenly Eye Group is over, the completely unreasonable extreme expulsion law will naturally be abolished. At that time, if Ryudo wants to continue studying, he can still come back here. But now is not the time. In this situation where war is about to break out, Ryudo can't continue to stay here. Otherwise, he will only cause trouble for Adolf and the others." Adolf naturally understood this, so he had to take Ryudo's withdrawal application and nodded to the young man, who was both a student and a friend. "Okay." Suddenly, Ryudo grinned, turned around, and faced the protesters led by Kawatanaki. The moment he turned around, Kawatanaki couldn't help but sit on the ground, and the hundreds of protesters also trembled. "I have now submitted the withdrawal application. I am no longer a student here. Can you get out now?" When he said this, although Ryudo had a smile on his face, his tone and eyes were not smiling at all. For a moment, the hundreds of people were silent. No one dared to say yes to Ryudo, and no one dared to say no to Ryudo. In fact, the group of students who came to protest were already scared silly. They could curse Ryudo Kiryu behind his back, but when he really appeared, they didn't even dare to fart. Nothing to say, right? Seeing this group of trash was scared into silence, Ryudo sneered. "If you have nothing to say, then leave. If you dare to come here in the future, I will." "Wait, I have something to say." Just as Ryudo was about to say, "If you dare to come here in the future, I will twist your heads off, and then leave," a very familiar voice came from the back of the crowd. This voice is Yunyan. When he heard the voice, Ryudo couldn't help but raise his eyebrows, revealing a somewhat surprised expression. And under the gaze of the protesting students and a large group of students, the second-year school beauty, Yunyan, walked with firm steps from the back and came in front of Ryudo and Principal Adolf. "It's Yunyan, great. Is she going to come over and scold this stinky hooligan?" Almost all the students present knew very well about the rumors between Yunyan and Ryudo, so when they saw Yunyan appear, they couldn't help but show a look of anticipation. Especially Wakata, who once pursued Yunyan but was ignored by her, looked at Yunyan with the expression of seeing the Virgin Mary. He couldn't wait for her to scold this stinky hooligan on the spot and publicly draw a line with him. In many people's opinion, Yunyan would definitely fall out with Ryudo. After all, Ryudo has become a bug that everyone wants to beat up after yesterday's live broadcast, and Yunyan can't always stay with him like before. However, when Yunyan came in front of Principal Adolf, she did something that everyone couldn't believe. She took out a letter from her pocket and respectfully handed it to Principal Adolf with both hands, and said seriously, "Principal Adolf, this is my withdrawal application, please accept it." Did I hear it wrong? The words that flew out of Adolf's mind were also the words that flew out of the minds of the surrounding crowd. Yunyan, Wild Geese in the Moonlight, the third-year school beauty, She wants to submit a withdrawal application? Why is she doing this? What reason does she have to do this? After being shocked for 2 seconds, Adolf quickly asked, "Wait. Student Union, you're going to graduate in a few months, right? Why do you have to do this at this time?" "Because this is the Extreme Path Expulsion Act that was issued yesterday. Isn't it written that all relatives of Extreme Path members can't enter the school? In order to avoid making things difficult for you, it's better for me to take the initiative to withdraw from the school." Relatives of Extreme Path members? Which Extreme Path member are you a relative of? Faced with this question that everyone wanted to know, Yunyen turned around naturally, reached out and hugged Ryudo's arm, and said with a smile, "Of course I'm Ryudo's relative, I'm his wife, he's my husband, and the father of the child in my belly. We're considered direct relatives." From a legal perspective, spouses are indeed considered direct relatives. But the problem is that Yunyen's speech just now was not inferior to a super bomb explosion, and it has already shocked everyone around to the point that their eyes almost popped out. Well, what the hell? Yunyen and Ryudo Kiryo are married? And she's pregnant? Seeing the two of them leaning against each other, and hearing the explosive speech just now, the group of boys who originally wanted to watch Long Do make a fool of himself couldn't help but feel deeply heartbroken. Some of them almost couldn't help but cry on the spot. Are you kidding me? They originally wanted to see the school beauty cut ties with this stinky pervert. But who knew that their relationship has developed to the point of having a family? And now they want to withdraw together. This was especially true for Watanabe, who had originally planned to continue pursuing Yin Yen after Ryuda left. When he found out that the goddess in his heart had a bloated belly, his mouth was wide open, looking very comical, just like a big toad. Unfortunately, he would never be able to eat swan meat. Ha 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 ha. When everyone around was shocked to the point of vomiting blood, Principal Adolf let out a burst of bold laughter, and said with a smile, "I see, then I wish the two of you a happy marriage. And when the two of you have a wedding, remember to invite me to the wedding wine. Of course at that time we will." "Hey, what are you talking about? What do you mean by the two of you have a wedding?" "That's right, Yunyen, you can't run away." Just when Ryudo wanted to say, "When the time comes, we will definitely invite you, and there will be plenty of wine." Not far away from the crowd, two familiar voices came from behind. Before the people around them could recover from the shocking scene just now, a voice rang out from behind them. The second year's campus belle, Kamishiro Ruri, and the first year's campus belle, Saito Tagunya, also made their way through the crowd and stood in front of Ryudo, Yunyen, and Principal Adolf. Very coincidentally, the colored glaze and Dunya also had a letter in their hands. These two. Could it be? Because this had already happened before. Some of the quick-witted people already had their mouths wide open, and some even reached out to slap their faces, as if wondering if they were daydreaming. At the same time, the two ladies also came in front of Principal Adolf, and they both handed over the withdrawal application in their hands. "Principal Adolf, thank you very much for your care in the past 2 years. Well, my time here is relatively short, but thank you for your care." This can't be right. When Adolf received the withdrawal application from Colored Glaze and Dunya, he was completely stunned. Just now, Yunyen wanted to withdraw with Ryudo, because the two of them were a couple, and Yunyen was also pregnant. In order to support her husband, they naturally had to go through thick and thin together. But now Colored Glaze and Dunya also did the same thing, which meant, "Hey, did the three of you discuss this?" Seeing this scene, Ryudo couldn't help but ridicule with a wry smile. From the beginning, Ryudo only planned to withdraw himself. He didn't think that Yunyen, Colored Glaze, and Dunya would also do the same thing. "We didn't discuss it." Colored Glaze shook her head, looked at the two sisters and smiled. "It just happened that we thought of the same thing." "That's right. And if you're not here, there's no point for us to stay here. We have to see this group of disgusting people every day. It's really disgusting." While saying, Dunya glanced at the group of protesters who came with Konami and Tanaki with her sharp eyes. She bluntly described them as disgusting. Bang! 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 At that moment, among the group of boys who came to protest, There were countless heartbroken sounds again. The third grade campus bell, Union Suki. The second grade campus bell, colored glaze Kanzaki. The joke of the first grade, Dunya Saitu. These three campus bell each had a very stable fan base in Deutsche First High School. It could be said that more than 90% of the boys were fans of the three of them. After all, their appearance and temperament were far from ordinary high school students. And they even surpassed the level of idols. So it was natural for them to be able to get so many people's support. But today, just as the hooligan Tong Sheng Ryudu was about to leave, the three school beauties all said they wanted to leave with him. This, what the hell is this? It seems that your wedding will be very lively. Looking at the three beauties around Ryudo, Principal Adolf couldn't help but show a teasing expression. It's okay, just remember to come when the time comes. Goodbye. Finally, after shaking hands with Old Man Adolf, Ryudo took his three future wives, passed through the crowd of heartbroken, crying and screaming people, and walked out of Deutsche First High School in a dignified manner. His departure marked the end of a legend. At the same time, it was also the beginning of another legend. Chapter 333. Oh, this is great. We don't have to spend time in school anymore. Just when the four of them left Dori First High School together and rushed back to the Rulong Group headquarters, Dunya stretched slightly with a refreshing smile on her face. For Dunya, if she had the time to go to school, she might as well spend it on cultivating her martial skills. Recently, Dunya had almost mastered the Saito-ryu Palea martial arts passed down by her family. She was pestering Furamaki every day to learn his Furamaki Palea martial arts. It had to be said that Dunya was indeed a martial arts genius. In just a short year, she had changed from a useless person who couldn't resist when assassins tried to assassinate her to a powerful martial arts master. In terms of combat power, the current Dunya was very close to the demon child Saitu, who was killed by Ryudo half a year ago. Although there was still a lot of difference in skills, with the monster-level LV5 physique, it was enough to crush a large number of opponents. Is that so? But after hearing Dunya's words, Yunyan said regretfully, Actually, I still like to stay in school. I can get in touch with my classmates, and it's convenient for me to collect materials for my novel. But there's no other way. Compared to her own preferences at this stage, it was obviously more important to support her husband. Yunyan couldn't let Ryudo leave school alone. If he had to leave, then everyone should leave together. At this time, Ryudo also reached out and held Yunyan and Dunya's hands and sighed. It's good to have you here. I swear, I will give you a chance to come back to school in the future. That doesn't matter, as long as you treat us better. Especially senior sister Yunyan, she's pregnant. Speaking of this, Dunya smiled and reached out to touch Yunyan's belly. Although there was no protrusion yet, Dunya seemed to be able to feel the existence of the little life inside. She also liked to reach out and touch it, as if she was greeting the child in advance. Ahem. Just as Ryudo, Yunyan, and Dunya leaned together, warmly colored glaze, sitting opposite the three of them, coughed. Obviously, she was very dissatisfied with the atmosphere that she couldn't integrate into. Let's talk about something serious, colored glaze. What are you going to do next? Seeing that colored glaze seemed to have something to say, Ryudo also let go of Yunyan and Dunya's hands and asked in a serious tone. Since a few months ago, Long Do and Luli had already been in charge of different areas. Long Do was in charge of extreme Dao-related matters in the Black Hand Alliance. Luli, on the other hand, was responsible for the affairs of the Yada Crow Alliance. After a few months of hard work, the Iron Triangle formed by the Kanzaki clan, the Tsukujiri group, and the Saitu Club has already grasped the absolute dominance of the Hagakure. Although they hadn't completely controlled the organization, as long as they were given a little more time, they would be able to push Kaneshiro Rui to the position of another Golden Heron. At that time, the organization would really become Colored Glaze and her daughter. In fact, during this period, Colored Glaze and Rui were also doing work in this area. But judging from the situation of the Tenma group, the speed of controlling Yatsuki might have to be faster. So far, among the 3 golden herons of Yatsuki, Prime Minister Shinzo Tanagawa, who was in charge of politics, had already become Iam's man. He had become an enemy force. They had to find a time to get rid of him. Sakujiri Kyoji, who was in charge of business, was originally one of Colored Glaze's own people. That left the last golden heron, who was in charge of religion, in an uncertain position. The leader of the religious circle was Japan's largest and oldest shrine, Ayase Grand Shrine, the highest clergy, priest Takahara Miya. In the religious world, there was no one who didn't know about Takahara Miyagi. He could be said to be the true leader of Shinto. Almost all large-scale Shinto celebrations would be completed by this old man, who was now 100 years old. But because Ayase Grand Shrine was located in Ayase City, Miya Prefecture, and because Takahara Miya was already old, it was difficult to see him in Tokyo. If they wanted to find him, they had to go to Ayase City. I originally planned to slowly pull Takahara Miya down, but now it seems that I should be more direct. Ryudo, please. Colored Glaze then nodded to Ryudo. No problem. Ryudo sneered. Let's go to Ayase Grand Shrine and find the old man. If he's willing to give up his position, then it's fine. If he's not willing, then I can only wish him a long life. Living a long life was a blessing for most people. But for an old man who was just 100 years old, it was a real threat. Now that Colored Glaze and the others wanted to further seize the power of Yatsuki, they had to push Rui Miya to the position of Golden Heron. If that was the case, the Takahara Temple would either retreat or die. There was no other way out. If it had been someone else, they might not have dared to kill the sacrificial master. In a country where Shintoism accounted for 80% of the population. But Ryudo didn't care about that. If he really couldn't come to an agreement, he could even burn down the Ayase Grand Shrine. Alright, then I'll leave it to you. Although Colored Glaze knew that it wasn't appropriate to deal with a 100-year-old man like this, it wasn't the time to care about this. According to the situation this morning, ever since Shinzo Tanagawa published the infamous Extreme Extinction Bill last night, the situation of the Black Hand Alliance, led by Ryudo, had become very difficult. Even if it was Ryudo, a notorious extreme boss, there were people who dared to protest against him and tell him to get lost. Needless to say, the other extreme hooligans in Tokyo were simply in the state of a rat crossing the street. This situation could be said to be a great blow to the morale of the underground world. If it wasn't resolved quickly, even a behemoth like the Black Hand Alliance had the possibility of collapse because all the extreme members couldn't live normally. Not to mention other things, just the fact that they couldn't go to regular stores to shop and couldn't take transportation was terrible. Although the underground merchants led by the flower merchant quickly found a way to buy necessities through the black market, it wouldn't last long. Once the black market was closed down, the extreme dojos would be in absolute chaos. So now they had to be fast. They had to counterattack before the extreme dojos were forced to the limit. Otherwise, the longer it dragged on, the more disadvantageous it would be for Ryudo. Then I'll go to Ayase first. I'll leave the house to you guys. After nodding to Colored Glaze, Yunyin and Dunya, Ryudo opened the car door and jumped out. Okay, this guy is becoming more and more inhumane. Looking at Long Do, who didn't even need to stop the car, and left halfway to find a transportation to Ayase City, Lily couldn't help but sigh. After Ryudo left, Dunya asked, "Then what should we do now? The situation is a bit chaotic now. Just in case, it's better for everyone to stay together. Especially Yunyin, she can't leave our sight." Suddenly, Colored Glaze glanced at Dunya, the strongest combat power on their side other than Ryudo. Colored Glaze already had a good understanding of the dirty woman Tenmu Ayam. In this war, Ayam would undoubtedly lay her hands on Ryudo's 3 women, namely Colored Glaze. Especially after Yunyin was pregnant, she might accidentally become an important hostage. In this case, it was best for the 3 of them to stay together. At least with the protection of Dunya, the little superhuman, they would feel more at ease. Even if the fighting under the heavens mercenary group came, they might not be Dunya's opponent. Hearing Colored Glaze's words, Union chuckled. It's great to be able to stay with you too. It feels like we're a family. We're a family. Don't forget. The one in your belly has to call us mom in the future. Really, then he's so lucky. Not only does he have a good father, but he also has 3 good mothers. Thinking of this, Union couldn't help but reach out and touch her belly, revealing a happy smile full of maternal aura. However, just as the family of 4 over there was going home happily, Ryuto, who flew away from the car, quickly found a corner where no one was paying attention and took out a small aircraft from the air. Dang 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 dang. Rogue stealth jet. Accompanied by the sound effect of Doraemon taking out a new item, a small one-person jet about 4 or 5 meters long appeared in front of Ryuto, and this plane was also named Wallace by him. Although this small jet plane could only carry 1 person, it had a very special stealth flight system. It could be undetected by the naked eye and most radars during flight. And the most important thing was that this small plane was a prop purchased from the Krypton shopping mall. It could be stored in the prop bar regardless of the number. It could be taken out and used at any time. It could be said that it was very convenient. Of course, such a useful small plane was not cheap in price. The price of a single unit was 2 billion. Even with Ryuto's current wealth, he didn't dare to buy it casually. Boom. Rumble rumble. Take off. Wallace. Accompanied by the roar of the plane's engine, the small plane quickly flew forward from the dark corner of the street, and it turned into a phantom and quickly disappeared above the clouds. Generally speaking, from Yodo to ISE, it took at least 2 hours, but with the speed of the Wallace, Ryuto could reach the destination in less than 15 minutes. That was to say, from the time he went to the ISE Grand Shrine to the time he finished his business, it took at most more than an hour, which was quite fast. I hope there are no accidents during the time I'm out. Especially Colored Glaze's side. When driving the small jet plane quickly toward ISE, Ryuto couldn't help but think in his mind. At the same time, he silently planted a flag. Chapter 334. The ISE Grand Shrine, located in ISE City, Mie Prefecture, was the most special existence among the more than 80,000 shrines in Japan. It was the leader of all shrines, and even the spiritual pillar of the entire Shinto religion. ISE Grand Shrine was not a specific shrine, but a general name for the surrounding 125 shrines. Among them, the largest inner shrine was dedicated to the ancestral god of the royal family, Amaterasu Amakami, and the outer shrine was dedicated to the Fungsho Amakami. The main shrine worshipped Amaterasu Amakami was located in the center of the inner shrine. The main shrine was a forbidden area, isolated by several wooden walls. Except for the royal family members, no one was allowed to enter. When Ryuto quickly flew to ISE City on the Wallace and arrived at the ISE Grand Shrine according to the navigation map, he almost laughed out loud when he saw the so-called spiritual pillar shrine. What the hell? Was the divine palace serious? Looking down from the air where Ryuto was, the entire interior and exterior of the ISE Grand Shrine entered his eyes. It was rumored that the architectural style of the ISE Grand Shrine was derived from the rice warehouse of the Yayoi period in Japan. The so-called rice warehouse was naturally a place to store rice, which was just a small warehouse. Such a warehouse-type building was pitifully small when looking down from above, as if hundreds of small wooden warehouses were stacked together. The most interesting thing was that these small warehouse-like shrines had names such as Imperial Grand Shrine, Baron Sacrificial Shrine, Tsukuyumi Shrine, Takahara Shrine, Kajishi Shrine, and so on the navigation map. But in fact, when taking a closer look, it was nothing more than a mess of rice warehouses piled together. It felt like entering a strange wood art exhibition, which was simply a waste of the word shrine. Not long after, Ryuto found the main shrine of the ISE Grand Shrine in the sky. It was said that the shrine worshipped Amaterasu Amakami, and only the royal family members were allowed to enter the forbidden area. Looking down from above, he could see many tourists around the divine palace. However, there was no one around the main hall because tourists were not allowed to enter at all. They would be blocked by the clergy who worked here. Unlike other shrines, the security guards of ISE Grand Shrine are all policemen of the self-defense forces. This in itself shows that this shrine has a special political significance. No wonder its priest has been able to take over the position of Yatsuki Golden Heron for generations. According to what Colored Glaze said, that Takahara Miyagi should be in the main hall. Let's do that. The corners of Longdo's mouth curled up as he flew the plane towards the main hall. He even arrogantly stopped the plane above the wooden main hall. Crack! When the heavy Wallace landed on the wooden roof of the main hall, Ryudo could clearly hear a strange cracking sound. Therefore, he quickly got off the plane and put the small plane back into the prop space. Then he flipped down from the corner of the roof and slipped into the main hall. When Ryudo slipped in, several clergy ran out of the main hall and looked towards the roof. What's going on? Did I just hear a cracking sound from the roof? Did something fall on the roof? Go get a ladder, I'll climb up and take a look. Just as the clergy were about to climb up to the roof, Ryudo quietly slipped in from the side of the main hall. The main hall was not big. After entering, one could almost see the end of it at a glance. In the middle of the wooden shrine filled with the smell of incense, there was a statue of the Amaterasu. However, the decorations around it were a little too boring. If it wasn't for the explanation, it would be hard to tell that this was the legendary king of shrines. However, there was no one in the depths of the main hall. The centenarian, priest Takahara Miyagi, was naturally not here. Strange, is that guy resting today? Or, when Ryudo curiously walked behind the statue of Amaterasu Amakami, he suddenly stopped because he felt a slight cold wind coming from below the wooden floor in front of him. Creak. So Ryudo came to the floor and felt around. Then he lifted it up and revealed a rock tunnel that led to the underground. So that's how it is. Is the main body of this main hall below? Above is just a decoration used to deceive others. What a joke. When Ryudo went deeper into the underground tunnel, he saw a huge double door at the end. The ancient-looking door was painted with vermilion red paint. In this dark tunnel, it looked particularly scary, like the door to hell. But of course, Ryudo did not care about this. He gently pushed open the door and walked in. What appeared in front of him was a huge inner hall. Yes, an inner hall buried in the ground. It looked dignified, but in fact it was emitting gusts of cold wind. It was a clear morning, and the bright sunlight shone through the light gaps in the ceiling. Under the light, it looked like there were mirrors sprinkled with silver everywhere, illuminating the entire underground hall. And in the deepest part of the inner hall, there was a magnificent golden statue. Different from the Amaterasu Amakami in the main hall, this statue was actually made of pure gold, and its shape was also different. It looked very expensive. Around the statue, there were a large number of hand-carved wooden tablets. In front of the wooden tablets, there were a large number of offerings. The number of these wooden tablets was so large that in the inner hall, except for a 3-meter wide aisle, the rest of the space on the left and right sides were almost occupied by these things. Longdo took a closer look and saw that the wooden tablets were filled with the names of gods and gods. For example, Yujia's soul control god, Cheong-Cheong-Zun, Sujio-Wu-Zun, Ebisu-Zun, Jiaju-Tu, and so on. Walking in here, it was like walking into a Shinto god exhibition. Almost all the Shinto gods' names were engraved on the wooden tablets. You finally came. Ryudo Kiryu. However, when Ryudo came to the depths of the inner hall, the old figure kneeling in front of the huge pure gold statue said without looking back. According to the information, Takahara Miyagi was very old, at least 100 years old. When he knelt in front of the golden statue, Ryudo didn't realize that this was a living person. He thought it was some kind of statue. This is the golden heron Takahara Miyagi. Not bad. He does have the aura of a Shinto leader. Seeing the stooped old man slowly stand up from the cushion, Longdo walked over and said with a smile, "You seem to know that I'm coming." Although Ryudo suddenly appeared, Takahara Miyagi didn't seem to be surprised at all. He even casually greeted the leader. Of course, I'm a person who gave my life to the 8 million gods. Naturally, I'm protected by the gods. How can anything in the mortal world escape the eyes of the gods? When Takahara Maeiji stood up, Ryudo found that his body looked very thin, as if he would be blown away by the wind. However, his slightly turbid eyes exuded a strange aura. This was an old man who wore the traditional costume of Shinto and stayed in the underground hall, where 8 million gods were worshipped. He seemed to be able to see through everything. When most people met Takahara Maeiji, they would have a feeling of being seen through, and would even think that he was the messenger of the gods. However, Ryudo naturally wouldn't be fooled by him, because in the rogue's analysis mirror, the old man's attributes were completely seen through. At this time, the personal attributes of this ISE Grand Shrine Priest were name, Takahara Maeiji age, 100 years old attributes, Wisdom LV4, Constitution LV4, Courage LV4, Insight LV4, Charm LV4. Amazing! Even from Ryudo's point of view, Takahara Maeiji was a top genius among humans. Years of religious life gave him a pair of eyes that could see through everything. This was directly reflected in the attributes of LV4 Insight. Extreme Superman level of eyesight. Such amazing insight coupled with powerful wisdom and charm, coupled with the mysterious aura brought by years of cultivation, this gave Takahara Maeiji the ability to lead the entire religious world. And other than that, this old man was very cunning. After hearing Takahara Maeji's pretentious words, Ryudo smiled and said, "When you say you're protected by the gods, are you referring to the camera installed at the entrance of the underground passage? By the way, which one of the 8 million gods is in charge of the camera?" In fact, when he came in from the underground passage, Ryudo had already noticed the camera installed in the passage. He just pretended not to notice it. Takahara Maeiji just said that he knew Ryudo was coming because of the protection of the gods. But in fact, he just saw it in advance from the camera installed at the entrance. Who was he trying to fool? After being exposed by Ryudo, Takahara Maeji's eyebrows twitched slightly, but he still said without any expression, "Everything in the world is given by the gods. Technology is also the same. Of course, it is the blessing of the gods." Pfft! Ha 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 ha! When he heard this extremely shameless words, Ryudo couldn't help but clap his hands and said, "You religious people are really shameless. Anyway, it is the work of the gods. It has nothing to do with humans, right? You can say that compared to the thousands of years of foundation of the gods, the short 100 years of human life is just a drop in the ocean. It is not worth mentioning. I won't watch the next debate without you. Forget it. Since you know everything, you should know why I am here, right? Of course, you are here to take my life, that's all." Although he knew that Ryudo was here to take his life, Takahara Maeiji still showed a strange smile. Chapter 335. Even though he knew that Ryudo was here to take his life, Takahara Miya wasn't worried at all. In fact, he looked very relaxed. It was clear that he was prepared for this. Ryudo smiled and said, "I don't have to take your life. If you are willing to retire and give up your position, I can guarantee that you will live until you are buried." Retire and give up my position? Kanzaki Ruehue is really greedy. Not only did she steal Iwasaki's position with Sakudari Kyoji, she also wants my position? Takahara Miya couldn't help but sigh. It was clear that he had a headache because of that woman. It was clear that even though he had lived in the ISE Grand Shrine for many years, he had a thorough understanding of the outside world. He could even roughly guess Ruehue's plan. "Since you know, that's great. One word. Are you going to give up or not?" "Give up? It's impossible. With just you, you don't deserve to make me give up my position." "Very good." Seeing that Takahara Miya rejected his proposal without any hesitation, Ryudo's mouth cracked into a cruel smile. However, before long Do was ready to take the old man's head, Takahara Miya's right hand, which was hidden in his robe, quietly pressed a button. In the next second, the situation in the underground palace changed drastically. Rumble! In the blink of an eye, the floor that Long Do was standing on suddenly loosened. It was like magic that the floor suddenly moved to the side, Ryudo, who had lost his footing, fell into the pitch-black trap under the cold gaze of Takaharamiya. In the blink of an eye, he disappeared from sight. Those who don't respect the gods will be punished for eternity. Looking at the pitch-black pit in front of him, Takaharamiya couldn't help but laugh. In the caves below, there were countless poisonous insects, snakes, ants, bees, and other poisonous creatures. These poisonous creatures would inject their toxins into the human body to cause paralysis, and cause pain so intense that the person would want to die, but would not be able to die even if they wanted to. Just as the Takahara Miyagi had said, below was the netherworld purgatory. Anyone who came to this underground palace to look for trouble would fall into the netherworld purgatory, with just a flick of his finger. They could neither live nor die. It was because of this special mechanism that Takaharamiya wasn't afraid of the Supreme Emperor, who came to look for trouble. He even felt lucky that he could kill him so easily. Shushu, next is that woman Kanzaki Roihue. I have to teach her a lesson, and let her know that my position as the Golden Heron is unshakable. Takaharamiya smiled as he watched the hole slowly being filled up by the movable floorboards that extended out from both sides. He then turned around and prepared to leave through the small path behind the statue to deal with Kanzaki Rui, Rumble. But at this moment the floor, which was at least a meter thick, let out a burst of explosive sound. What? Takaharamiya's eyes suddenly widened. He turned around and saw a big hole in the slowly closing floor. At the same time, a palm pressed against his bald head. It was like the hand of a devil that had returned from hell, causing chills to run down his spine. Hey, what happened to the eternal punishment? It won't end like this, right? Takaharamiya turned his head stiffly and saw that Ryudo Kiryu, who had just fallen into the pit, was standing beside him with a happy smile. How is this possible? How did he get out of there? In an instant, Takahara Miyazaki was completely dumbfounded. His previous appearance of a strategist and a demon-like intelligence had long since disappeared from his mind. One had to know that the vertical height of this cave was about 10 meters, and the surrounding walls had been specially treated. It was so slippery that it was impossible to climb up from the inside. One could only fall onto the soft cushion and be slowly poisoned to death by the poisonous insects that came from all directions. But Ryudo seemed to ignore the 10 meters of vertical height. It even directly shattered the hard movable floor that was at least 1 meter thick. Was this something a human could do? But now was not the time for Takaharamiya to think about these things. The most important thing was, his head was still in Ryudo's hand. Takaharamiya suddenly felt that the purgatory was very close to him, as if it was between the palm. After a moment, Takaharamiya laughed dryly. Ryudo Kiryu-san? I think we should sit down and discuss this. Io, why did the great high priest suddenly become so easy to talk to? Aren't you going to send me to the netherworld purgatory to receive eternal punishment? No, that's just an adjective, a description. After feeling the displeasure in Ryudo's tone, Takaharamiya swallowed his saliva and said obediently, Didn't Mrs. Ruehue want me to be the Golden Heron? Actually, I also want to retire recently. Why don't I do Mrs. Ruehue a favor? How about that? Very good, I like your current attitude. But even if you like it, you still have to go down to the netherworld. Before Takahara Michio could react, Longdo had already taken out a rope that was usually used for climbing from the prop bar, and wrapped it around the limbs and waist of the priest of Ise Grand Shrine. In the next second, Takaharamiya's old body was pushed forward by Ryudo and flew into the hole that was just broken open. Hey, aha! In an instant, the old priest's panicked voice echoed in the deep hole, and then there was a plop sound. There was a thick cushion at the bottom of the hole that was about 10 meters deep. It could ensure that people wouldn't die on the spot after falling down. Of course, it wasn't set up out of kindness. Rustle, 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 rustle. Zap, zap, zap. When Takaharamiya's body landed on the mattress, he could hear countless tiny crawling sounds coming from the darkness around him. No way. As the palace lord of this underground palace, Takahara Miyagi naturally knew what kind of demons and monsters were being raised in this cave. Those poisonous insects, snakes, ants, bees, and other poisonous creatures would not eat humans. They would only bite humans and inject their venom into their bodies, causing them to slowly die under the double torture of the venom and insect bites. That scene was extremely cruel. In the past, Takehara Miyagi had personally witnessed the tragedy of falling into this cave many times. Every time, he would happily hope that the people inside would die a little slower. However, this sacrificial lord never thought that there would be a day when he would fall into this cave. Hearing the group of people quickly approaching him, Takehara Myo's face turned pale with fright, and he shouted, "Help! Help! Ryudo Kiryu, help me up. I'll agree to whatever conditions you have." Before he finished, the ropes that bound Takehara Myo's limbs and waist quickly tightened and pulled him up. Before the poisonous creatures could reach the priest's body, Ryudo quickly pulled him up. "Do you really agree to any conditions?" Longdo looked at Takehara Myo, who was about to pee his pants in fear, and asked him with a smile on his face. Takehara Myo didn't dare to speak now, and he could only tremble as he replied, "Yes, yes, any conditions. But now I don't want to talk about conditions with you. I just want to see if the so-called 8 million gods really exist." What do you mean? Didn't you say that you are the one who gave your life to the 8 million gods? And naturally you will be protected by the gods? Since you are protected by the gods, then the poisonous creatures won't hurt you, right? What is this guy thinking? Just when Takehara Myo seemed to understand Ryudo's intention, he saw Ryudo's other hand also stretched out a long rope and swung it like a whip towards the pile of wooden tablets not far away. Crash! As the rope swung, a large pile of wooden tablets with the word Shinto gods engraved on them fell into the hole in the middle. Then, Longdo waved the rope a few more times and swept the large pile of wooden tablets into the hole in the middle, into the deep purgatory of the netherworld. After doing all this, Ryudo smiled and said to Takehara Myo, "Now the gods you believe in are with you. Accept their protection and peace." "Wait, I still have something to say." "You can't." "Aha." Before he could finish his sentence, his aged body once again fell into the cave below. Accompanied by a series of clanging sounds, he smashed into a large pile of wooden tablets and divine positions. This time, Longdo took the opportunity to retrieve the rope that was wrapped around his body. This also meant that the huge hole below was the life tomb of the priest of Ayase Grand Shrine. Ryudo Kiryu. A yen at hashtag. %*% yen at hashtag. Hashtag. When countless poisonous insects crawled over the wooden tablets engraved with the names of the gods and finally climbed onto Takehara Myo's body, the old man, who was stimulated by the intense pain, finally couldn't hold it in anymore and began to roar like a madman, cursing something that no one could understand. But not long after, the sound from the hole became weaker and weaker. Obviously, the owner of the hole had been paralyzed by the venom of countless poisonous creatures below, or his mouth was full of poisonous insects. What awaited him next was a purgatory that was 100 times more terrifying than death, being bitten by countless venomous insects and soaked in terrifying venom. Even if he had the protection of a large number of gods, it was obviously of no use. "Idiot, why didn't you just choose to retire and give up your position? I gave you face, but you don't want it." After taking one last look at the hole, Ryudo, who had just smashed the golden statue and was about to transport it away in batches, couldn't help but shake his head, as if he was lamenting someone's recklessness. If Takehara Myo could still shout, he would definitely be furious when he saw Ryudo smashing the golden statue at this time. After all, this golden statue was passed down from the era when Ayase Grand Shrine was built, and it was one of the most commemorative pure gold Buddha statues in the world. But under Ryudo's hammer, the golden statue that had weathered hundreds of years of wind and rain in the inner temple turned into a pile of gold. Then, Ryudo transported them away in batches on the Wallace. It was really a pleasant morning. When Longdo transported a large pile of gold nuggets to a mountain not far away by plane and lit a fire in the Ayase Grand Shrine, he even sang happily when he enjoyed the rare beauty, although his singing was worse than crying. You're tuning in to the Earbook Haven YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.